I'm sorry. Let's try that again. Hi, friends, and welcome to the Eureka City Council meeting tonight. I'd like to call this meeting to order. May we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Burgell.
Here.
Councilmember Castellano. Oh.
Leslie, can you hear Pam? She's here.
Okay. Councilmember Moulton.
Here?
Okay. Councilmember, we've got a echo tonight, so neat. Councilmember Arroyo.
Here, and I believe if everyone mutes themselves, it may help in the audience.
Councilmember Bauer.
Here.
And Mayor Seaman is absent tonight.
Okay, so thanks everybody for being here. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Please be seated. We have no closed session today. So for mayor's announcements, I'm going to be reading a resolution that we passed, if I can find it here, in 2017, just as a reminder. Let me just look here. Actually, first I'm going to read the decorum of this meeting. This is going to be really important moving forward. All persons in attendance in public meetings are requested to observe the following rules of civil debate. We may disagree, but we will be respectful to one another. All comments will be directed to the issue at hand. Personal attacks are unacceptable. Applauding or other displays of approval or disapproval are discouraged. If the mayor deems it necessary to recess a council meeting due to a disruption in council chambers or other unidentified safety issues, all council members will be escorted out. Council members shall not stand in the. Never mind. Council, am I reading this?
Just in the highlighted spot?
This part or this part? Just the front. Okay. Okay. Additionally, all persons in physical attendance at public meetings are required to adhere to any and all public health orders in effect at the time of the meeting, which has been issued by the state of California and or the county of Humboldt in regards to the wearing of face coverings or other COVID-19 prevention measures. Right? Okay. Thank you. We appreciate you adhering to those principles. So for mayor's reports, I'm bringing forward a resolution that council approved back in 2017. It is the first meeting of the year. And so I just want to set that intention. This is a resolution of the City Council affirming human rights, inclusiveness, environmental sustainability, affordable health care, and religious freedom. Whereas, in light of the current climate in our country and the negativity and hate that is being fostered, wow, it's still the same in 2017. Whereas, Eureka will not turn our back on people from other countries who bring such richness to our city, we will continue to build bridges, not walls. And whereas, we will never back down on human rights, whether in healthcare, the workplace, or any other area threatened by others who treat people as objects to be demeaned or objects to be assaulted. And, just as important, we will ensure our youth grow up with role models who show them they can be or do anything. And whereas, that there will be no conversion therapy, no withdrawal of rights in Eureka, and to all the LGBTQIA people in our city and all over the country who feel scared, bullied, or alone, you matter. You are seen and you are loved. Whereas, that we still believe in this nation's founding principle of religious freedom, we do not ban people for their faith, And the only lists we keep are on invitations to come pray together. And whereas the Eureka Police Department is committed to building trust between police and communities of color so all citizens feel safe in their neighborhoods, and whereas our residents are committed to environmental sustainability and that climate change is real, and that clean power, zero waste, and other measures to protect future generations are a priority, and whereas affordable universal health care should be a continuing priority for the state of California and the United States. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Eureka, condemns all hate crimes and hate speech. We will fight discrimination and recklessness in all its forms. We place the highest value on human rights. Further resolved that this resolution be forwarded to Senators Feinstein, Harris, and Representative Huffman to demonstrate our city's commitments to fairness and inclusion. And I just wanted to share that, especially in the climate we're in now. Please be kind to each other. And maybe we can create a better year this year. With that, we will move on to presentations. Chief Robertson, Humboldt Bay Fire. Thanks for being here.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So I'm Sean Robertson, Fire Chief for Humboldt Bay Fire, just presenting a brief year-end review for 2021 this evening. We'll begin by just going over some of our incident statistics. As you can see, we have over 7,000 calls for the year, trending with what's become relatively standard for us over the last several years, with a predominant from medical calls, about 4% from fires, and the rest from the other categories that you can see. As a reminder, our calls for service are based on a National Fire Incident Reporting System database that is collected in Maryland at the National Fire Academy. And these categories are in fires, rescue, and EMS, hazardous conditions, service calls, good intent, and special calls. So for some more detail with fires, we have about 4% of our calls in that realm. Specifically, we had about 39 building or structure fires last year, and then a variety of other types of fires throughout our jurisdiction. With our 64% of rescue and EMS calls, with the rescues, that covers a lot of motor vehicle collisions between vehicles and with pedestrians, rescues, and extrications. And then with our medical calls, the predominant amount is over 3,800 with EMS calls, and then you see 568 with medical assists, where the ambulance arrives first on scene and takes primary patient care. This illustrates over the quarter the number of calls that we have at each station, and you can see that the majority of our call volume comes out of Station 1, which is at 6th and C Streets, followed by Station 3, then 4, then 5, and 2. That more or less aligns with the split with the calls between the city and the county areas. About 72% of our calls are located in the city of Eureka. With Station 1, the main reason for that is it's obviously down in the hub of the city, on the border of several highways with 101 going through, and then several housing facilities in our jurisdiction that we respond to. This graph generally shows the change in call volume over the year. The general account for that is, I believe, coming out of a lockdown from COVID, and then just an increase in activity in the last quarter through the holiday period. And frankly, school being back in regular session as well, just for a lot more activity in the area. You can see this is a 5-year record of our call volume. It fluctuates between 6,000 and 7,000, but this is the highest call volume we've had in the last several years. We continue to adapt to the COVID situation with our expanded protective equipment. We are still tracking our response to COVID-specific calls through our incident software. We had about 166 confirmed COVID cases last year, or COVID responses, I should say. We became a testing facility through the state where we can do rapid as well as PCR tests for our employees. We also assisted EPD with dispatch as well. We implemented a mandatory vaccination policy, and we're no longer supplementing city or county EOC staffing, but we did develop a MOU with county EOC Office of Emergency Services if they do need our assistance, that we can readily do that for them and get reimbursed for it. It was another challenging wildfire season in California, where we were requested to assist CAL FIRE from July all the way through September, responding to fire incidents as well as station coverage. And then in the spring and later in the fall, we responded to local incidents with our water tender, as well as last week, we sent our four-wheel drive wildland engine out to Willow Creek to assist with access issues that we were having. A lot of changes in the new year with several new firefighters, administrative staff, and board members. We also saw the resignations of several of our folks, including Engineer Jeff Broberg, who started with the City of Eureka Fire Department in 1996 and retired after 24 years of service. He'll be a great loss. We'll miss him a lot, as we will everybody else. But we're excited about a lot of the new changes that we're seeing. One thing that was a great loss was the passing of Kelly, the fire dog. Kelly was owned by one of our firefighters, Yola Montalban, and she was trained to assist with fire education. She was really tremendously successful in our school program, as well as our open house, and she was a really special part of our fire family. She'll be tremendously missed. When I spoke to Yola Montalban after she passed, he said we shouldn't be sad that she is gone. We should be happy and thankful for the time that we got to share with her. We had a lot of new accomplishments with several of our personnel becoming accredited as paramedics, new members of our water rescue team, and some promotions to engineer and captain as recently as this week. Engineer Mike Tyson was awarded the Star of Life and American Red Cross Awards for a water rescue he performed last year off the Hikshari Trail. We submitted for those awards that are very competitive. That doesn't sound right, but they're pretty prestigious to be awarded and honored in that way. And we are thankful for that recognition, not only of Mike, but of our water rescue program and all of our firefighters and EPD who assisted us as well. We also had a PET CPR taught by, again, firefighter Montalban. We do provide PET CPR on a significant number of our structure fire calls. As recently as 2 months ago at our RV fire we had across from Target, we do have specialized equipment that was acquired through a grant. All of that helps us provide that level of service to try to help resuscitate our pets and loved ones as well. We also welcome 2 new investigators to our cadre, and we hope to continue developing that. Our training side on Hillficker Lane continues to be improved thanks to Measure Z as well as from the City of Eureka. Our tower is now painted, the area is paved, and we have new fencing around that facility, and it's much improved for our training needs. We accomplished and are still working on several new projects, a community paramedicine initiative with St. Joe. We had our strategic plan with our 4 new goals of enhancing effective staffing, creating a comprehensive data analysis program, strengthening our disaster preparedness, and building community engagement. We created an equity committee, and through that work developed a statement and plan that integrates with our strategic goals. And we identified and are working on training and junior and cadet firefighter programs to increase our recruitment locally. We were again successful in acquiring a lot of grant funding for a lot of the programs. The most recent one was to get an inflatable boat for bay rescue through the state parks. We're working on acquiring that now, and we also, again, as I mentioned earlier, received the pet masks through another grant. Grant funding is important to our continued outreach and expansion of services. Training is a really key part of our firefighter preparedness. We try to reach a goal of 20 hours per firefighter per month, And through the year, we reached over 9,000 training hours for all of our personnel. Our CERT team, Community Emergency Response Team, continues to grow and be a great asset to the community through training, supporting the local COVID response, countywide drills, and most recently they received a $500,000 grant to provide trailers and equipment to all the other CERT teams in the county. So they're really building a coalition of community response that will benefit all of our citizens. In June, we dedicated our fallen firefighter memorial at Clark Plaza at the corner of 3rd and E Streets. It was a really powerful and profound ceremony, and we're very thankful for the cooperation of the Clark Museum and the City of Eureka in creating that memorial at that space. And I encourage everybody to visit it and reflect on the firefighters who are lost in the line of duty and the sacrifices they and their families made. We created and operationalized a volunteer dive team. As of the end of October, our 6 volunteers are available for countywide regional response. And we think this is a great resource for agencies and folks in the community to assist with search and rescue operations in our waters. Our community risk reduction program continues to grow. We reestablished our R1, R2 mandatory inspection of motels and hotels with a part-time inspector. We continue to pursue grants and work on our public education as we can out of COVID. One of the more significant incidents we had in the year was working with City of Eureka Code Enforcement, was mitigating 6,500 gallons of illegally stored ethanol that was found at a cannabis business. We had to essentially secure that storage area for 48 hours until we could get it transported and disposed of appropriately out of the city. That was a pretty significant thing. That concludes my brief presentation. I am happy to answer any questions council may have.
Thank you, Sean. Chief. Do we have any questions for Chief Robertson? Councilmember Burgell? That's me. Councilmember Arroyo.
Thank you. That was a really great presentation. I was just curious to know about the status of, I know in the past there's been some exploration over the years of providing transportation and EMT services to people in the community, since that's so limited here. And I know there were some complexities with that. Could you speak to that particular need and how that's going?
Yes, the local response and transportation for EMS is controlled through the county, which is legally provided by an exclusive operating agreement. And currently that's held in the City of Eureka by City Ambulance, and in Arcata by Mad River Ambulance. And they extend their areas as far north as all the way down to Garberville. Within that, though, we were exploring a community paramedicine program where we would do pre-hospital. Unfortunately, the state law prohibits us from doing that at this point. There are pilot programs throughout the state that are slowly being evaluated. That evaluation period was extended. That law is back up for review in 2 years. We've done a lot of groundwork with the local hospital to prepare for that because we believe it's still a great vehicle to benefit our local community and could also be beneficial for our other partners. So essentially, the status is we're waiting to take advantage of that opportunity and still continue working on developing that program.
Is there anything that we could do to advocate for that to be addressed more quickly? Or, I assume in 2 years that the council would, at that time would probably like to weigh in on that, but is there anything that could be done to expedite that review?
Nothing more than letters of support. Certainly, as that deadline comes to pass, we will be looking for political support, at the state capitol, because that's where those decisions are made. And if we can demonstrate a need, which I certainly believe we can easily do that locally, with support from the council, the county, and our other elected officials, we can have a much better chance of creating a more successful program.
And can I just ask one clarifying question, Mayor? Mayor
Sure.
Pro Tem? Does that mean that people who are waiting on an ambulance can't be transported to a medical facility, or what does that look like in practice? What does this need look like on the ground?
Well, similar to other alternative diversion programs that the city is working on, what I think you're asking is with the new program, not necessarily what's occurring now. Is that correct? So right now, it's all response-based. So if you have a medical emergency, it triggers a certain EMS response. One of the concepts that we're looking at is through the hospital, we can identify people who need care on a regular basis that we can then go and reach out to and essentially check up on them so that before there's an emergency, the care is provided. So it's kind of an expanded caregiver situation. I don't feel like I'm explaining it adequately, but the benefit is that those people who would be going to hospital because they have no way of getting any other treatment, because they can't get to a doctor, for example, would be able to be treated with things as simple as needing to get their medications refilled, need dressings replaced, things like that. They're very simple, but they're just not able to get the help that they need. So it wouldn't delay the emergency response per se, it would prevent the need for the emergency response.
Thank you for clarifying.
Sure.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or concerns? Well, I wanted to thank you for that great report and thank you for all you do. I just want to let you know that my daughter just celebrated 2 years since you guys saved. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I'll forever be grateful.
Thank you.
That was awesome. So thank you, Chief. And now we will move on to public comment. Wait a minute, let me look here. Yes. This is the time for members of the public who wish to be heard on matters that do not appear on the agenda. City Council policy is to limit each speaker to 3 minutes. Such time allotment or portion thereof shall not be transferred to other speakers. Members of the public wishing to address the council may submit. We're not doing speaker cards, are we? Right. So let me see here. The public will be allowed to speak concurrently with the calling of an agenda item following the staff presentation of that item. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the City Council may not take action on an item that does not appear on the agenda. So do we have anyone here tonight to speak on general public comment?
Sure you do, as usual.
Hi, Cornelius.
Your agenda, your worthy, your proclamation rang like tasteless humor in my ears. Having been discriminated and dragged into court by you for my freedom of speech, right, and losing that lawsuit, and facing 2/3 of the city council in the court, including the police chief at that time, pretty pathetic that you say all immigrants are so welcome. I'm an immigrant. I'm a lawful immigrant. I'm a Jewish lawful immigrant. And I got discriminated against me, as you well know, from your lawyer over the city council, over Leslie Castellani, calling me a hate monger on public television. It's pretty rich to listen to your proclamations. I mean, it's getting kind of pathetic, but we're used to that with the quality of leadership that you provide over the years, right? Anyway, the guy who who attacked me in the alley, the homeless guy who pulled a utility knife on me, was the same guy who stabbed the police officer next day. Isn't that cute? Isn't that special? Supporting needles, supporting the untreated, mentally deranged, homeless derelicts rummaging through Old Town while proclaiming you'd be in support of the police is a farce. And it's really, really pathetic. But again, amateurs in charge, this is what we get. This town is in total free fall. Sales revenues are going down, businesses are closing, tourism is faltering. I know from my German friends that Germans avoid this area like the plague. You have turned this area into a disgrace of the memories of Alexander von Humboldt. You weren't even capable of being part of the International Alexander von Humboldt year in 2019 because you were too busy grant whoring for needle exchange programs, hatchery, etc., pp, versus signing up for international event like the Alexander von Humboldt year 2019. As I said, your next chance is coming in 2069. Most likely none of us will be alive anymore. But 2069 is your next chance to celebrate Alexander von Humboldt's, at that point then, 300th birthday. But again, having been discriminated against, having been dragged to court, case that you lost, it's getting really rich for a Jewish little immigrant like me, with all the repercussions, the prosecution and persecution that I endured and encountered. To hear you talk about tolerance and all-inclusiveness and stuff like that, my Jewish grandparents would spin in their graves. Yeah, you can grin behind your mask as much as you want. The best thing you could do politically is to resign in shame. And you know that, Ms. Bergel.
Thank you, Cornelius. So whoever comes up next, please remember that we're not addressing individuals. We are addressing issues. So, but I appreciate your comments. So what I said was we are addressing issues, not individual council members. Thank you.
Hi, folks. I'm a resident of Eureka in the 3rd Ward, and I just thought the first meeting of 2022 to kind of recognize some of the good work that you're doing and also highlight some of what I think should be prioritized in the new year. So first, I want to express my thanks for implementing a sensible COVID vaccine policy for city employees in early October. I know that it's been tough, and I know you've had a lot of blowback, but you listen to experts, and that's your job, so thank you. Second, I want to thank you for focusing on housing needs. I think, you know, I'm a proponent of putting housing in those empty lots downtown, but I know that's a later agenda item. I support housing out at Winco. I support housing downtown. I just think that you need to keep putting housing, whether it's low income or middle income. I really strongly encourage you to keep housing at the top of your list because it's really tough for a lot of people. Third, I want to thank you for addressing some multimodal transportation needs. I think it's really hard to be a bicyclist. I'm a cycle commuter or a pedestrian in this town sometimes. And so I love that you've been thinking about, you know, ways, not just paths for like recreation, but paths for how you get north, south, east, west, you know, 6th and 7th H&I streets. How do you safely cross this town? I'd encourage you to think about Harris Street also, like kind of some of the ways that you get across town in some of the other parts of town, just as we think about kind of making it safer for everybody to get around town. And with that, I guess I'll just say that the last thing is that I know that a lot of businesses downtown are struggling, and that, you know, things like Arts Alive have been curtailed. So I guess the last priority would just be to think about ways to encourage people to continue to support local businesses. And with that, I hope you have a great year. Thanks.
Thank you, Erin.
Good evening, Council, and you guys. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the safety of Eureka. It's a very unsafe town. The fact that guy was bold enough to take a razor knife after a police officer is, could you imagine being a citizen running into that guy? And there was talk about people riding the transit bus more on the last city council meeting. And if you've noticed, you got people living in the transit bus stations in the little glass areas they give you to wait for the bus at. People are scared to ride that bus. How would you like to go to that transit bus and some guy asks you to do dope with him, which has happened to my friend who's a nurse that tries to ride the one that's right out front here. People have offered her dope, harassed her. I mean, she's afraid to even go there to catch the bus. The one in Fortuna by the Safeway, they had to take it out because people wouldn't quit sleeping in it, doing drugs in it, and hanging out in it all day. There's another one, or there's a hooker that stays in there all day getting heroin money and hooking and getting heroin money and back and forth all day. Anyway, I'm not trying to cut anybody down or anything like that, whatever. But Eureka is unsafe. It's unsafe to walk the waterfront trail. You don't know who's going to do what to you there. People are scared in this town. They're scared at their own house. People ravaging through their yards at night. They do anything about it and then they're held accountable. You need to do something to make the town safer, the city safer. Somebody's got to do something about it. All the drug addicts that are in this city of Eureka dropping their needles everywhere and hiding behind every building, every drive-through at a restaurant, panhandling when people come through, try to get some food to come through, that's what they see. Every stoplight near the mall, there's usually 3 on standby right there. There was an ordinance, I don't know how long ago it was, where it was illegal for them to do that, and they made it illegal because of their own safety. It's not safe for the panhandler to be there. They could be ran over very easily there. They distract traffic all day long. They have dogs run out in front of cars. That needs to be put back in place. There's no need for somebody to be panhandling at every stoplight at the Bayshore Mall. There's no need for needles all over the city of Eureka. Anywhere you go, behind any of those buildings along the bay, they're full of needles, full of diseases. Somebody's got to do something about that. Make this city safer. Thank you.
Thank you, James.
Good evening, City Council. My name's Harry. A lot of you know me, some of you don't. I usually come here to complain about the needle litter, but I've been doing some severe thinking, and the biggest problem we have in Eureka right now is the lack of mental health care. Outpatient, inpatient, there's no room. I feel sorry for EMS, fire, and police because their hands are tied. They can only do so much with what they have. And it should be the council who applies pressure to get more services in here. I came here, this month will be 15 years on the 18th. When I came here, this was a beautiful, quaint little village. The quality of life here has gone right in the tank. I'm originally from Queens, New York. I worked with fire and EMS for 23 and a half years, and I have never seen the low quality of service here. And I'm not blaming the fire department. I'm not pointing that finger. But between the fire department and the lack of care at St. Joseph's, which I have personally experienced, they have to, their hands are tied in a way too, because they have to treat what's brought to them, and the majority of what's brought to them are drug addicts, alcoholics, homeless people. And meanwhile, somebody like me having a heart attack sits in a lobby for 18 hours. Where's the sense of that? What we need is, as John Shelter has put out, is a triage center where you guys can go out and purchase 3 vans, man them with a police officer, a social worker, and a driver. You pick these people up, take them to John's triage center where all the services are, and get them services. And if they refuse services, make them mandatorily do it. You have criminals that you're letting walk the street that shouldn't walk the street, who should be referred to mental health services, but they're not. The people of this town are going to get tired of this. And we've come before you, the council, I won't say anybody in particular, but we've come before the council time and time again begging for help, begging for relief, and nothing's happened. Well, this year should be the year where we dedicate ourselves to finding ways to bring more mental health, inpatient, outpatient, and mandatory committal if that's what's needed. But I'm going to tell you something. As a junkie, an ex-junkie who's clean 15 years, I will tell you, it's insane to live in the streets. That's not sanity. That's insanity. And we have to get in there and bring that back, the sanity. Otherwise, it's just going to continue to degrade, and Eureka's going to become unlivable. People are going to move. It's that simple. Thank you.
Thanks, Harry. Congratulations on your 15 years.
I'm back again.
Hi.
I just wanted, after Cornelius mentioned the quality of leadership, it brought to mind you guys tucking your tails between your legs and running from the room the last meeting because of a couple unmasked gentlemen sitting 30 feet away from him, and I was thinking, that's not really the kind of fearless leadership that we're looking for in our representatives. That was pretty embarrassing. That being said, say you're driving or traveling along the road in a rainstorm. You come to a place that's submerged. A group of strangers flags you down and warns you that it's not safe to proceed. But while you're talking, a car goes by, drives through the submerged area, and emerges unscathed on the other side. You point this out to the strangers, but they tell you not to believe what you've just seen. They are extremely convincing, and you feel they must be right. As you wait, they keep repeating, it's not safe. You will die if you try to cross that water. But car after car goes by, and you can see the water is only up to the hubcaps. Finally, a car being driven by an old person arrives. He looks ill, and midway through the water, he has a heart attack, swerves off the road, and is carried away. See, the strangers cry, if you try to cross that water, you'll kill your grandpa. So you wait a while a whole string of cars passes by without issue. You think, you bastards, you're killing us, but you can see the water is actually going down. It was never that deep to begin with. You decide that it must be safe to go, but you are surrounded by these strangers warning you over and over again of the dangers of getting your tires wet. By now, they've convinced some of your family members who are donning waders and wetsuits inside of your car. What do? Do you trust your eyes and your common sense? Or do you listen to these strangers who obviously have been so busy running computer models and showing each other graphs that they've failed to see the steady stream of cars passing through this wet spot in the road? You can sit all day by that shallow water, hip waders and snorkel in hand, waiting for the strangers to tell you it's safe to go, or you can just go. You don't need their permission. Just go. If you haven't figured it out yet by now, you all are the strangers waving your arms wildly alongside the road saying, you must not pass, you'll die. And the rest of us are the ones sitting there watching people passing through ankle-deep water and wondering, why not just go? You guys need to start focusing more on what your constituents want and less on what you see on the TV.
Thank you.
Good
Hello.
evening.
Hello.
My name is Pepper again. I'm talking about the fact that this event that we're experiencing and this goofiness of wearing these masks and all of this business of COVID is in fact something that's been pre-planned. And I wanted to today leave you with a document which is before the International Criminal Court. It is a criminal complaint against the instigators of this crisis that we're experiencing. The subject of the complaint is violations of the Nuremberg Code and various articles of the Rome Statute. And it names perpetrators, and I'll just briefly mention that the perpetrators include the head of the World Health Organization and Bill Gates, and some of the CEOs of various pharmaceutical organizations, including Pfizer, and the other companies that are making billions of dollars off of this event. The applicants include Hannah Rose, a lawyer and human rights activist, Dr. Mike Yeadon, a qualified life science researcher with a degree in biochemistry and toxicology, a research-based PhD in respiratory pharmacology, and a former vice president and chief scientist of allergy and respiratory research at Pfizer. It also includes Pierce Corbin, an astrophysicist and an activist, as well as Mark Sexton, a retired police officer, John Looney, funeral director and activist, and some other folks. I want to skip to a couple of parts, and I know this time goes fast. The PCR tests are the basis for this fraud, and the way it works is the PCR test, I'm just reading parts of this document. The PCR test uses amplification cycles to find viral RNA. The sample is repeated chemically and amplified to increase the RNA copies. Each cycle of amplification doubles the number of molecules in a sample. If you run the sample enough cycles, you can effectively find a single molecule of any substance. That's why the inventor of the PCR test, Kerry Mullis, said that the technique can be used to find almost anything and anybody. So it's not a reliable test. And that is the core of the fraud. Because if you can say, you know, that's how they've made this claim that people who are asymptomatic can get this disease. But I also wanted to skip ahead to a section here. And again, this maybe I'll just keep coming back and back because this is just, it's too much information and too little time to present this. But on page 13 of the this complaint, it speaks about these events. Event 201 is one that you may have heard of. And I will mention that Event 201, they staged a pandemic.
Thank you, Pepper. Your
Happened
time's
in October
over.
2019.
Pepper, but you can certainly email to us, and please do come back.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'll have to come back again and again. It's just, you know, it does take a few minutes.
Yeah,
to explain
thank you for
this.
being
And,
here.
You know, I'll have to come back with this document and have to read the section again to you.
So your time is up, Pepper. Thank you so much for being here. Do we have anybody else that's interested in public comment? Please come forward.
Hi, folks.
Hello.
My name's Scott Chandler. I'm a native here in Humboldt. I was born in Scotia 65 years ago. Well, the other day I was walking down F Street, and there, Gary Kryla's second-hand store, I tripped over a raised piece of sidewalk. Fell down. I still have a scab on my knee, bent my wrist back. My back still hurts, and that was 3 weeks ago. And I walked around today and looked, and there's still orange paint on all these places. They were painted so long ago, a lot of it's worn off. What's going on? That's something the city council should do, is get the public works over there and grind those things down. So that's what I got to say. Luckily, I wasn't hurt any worse. Thanks.
Thanks for being here, Scott. Is there any... Nope, here we go. Oh, right, sorry.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thanks. My name's Emily, and as I watched that presentation and saw that there was a vaccine mandate, it upset me because we're asking healthcare providers and our first responders to take a leaky vaccine. And, you know, St. Joe's is in Eureka, and they mandated the vaccine for all their employees and have already fired those who didn't get vaccinated. And these people worked through COVID. A lot of them have natural immunity. Why are we not acknowledging natural immunity? Why is the city of Eureka not up in arms, having people in hospitals fired? I mean, the cafeteria staff, almost the entire cafeteria staff at St. Joe's was fired because of these vaccine mandates. And nurses in the ER, I mean, that hospital isn't even that great. I mean, they're better than Mad River Morgue, but it's not that great. So my plea is that you push back on these mandates and stop mandating them like within the city. You know, there's been a lot of stuff on mainstream news at this point saying that cloth masks are ineffective. I'm sure you all watch CNN and all that stuff, so watch it like a little bit more closely, because these things, they don't work. So, and putting them on our kids, that's child abuse. So I just beg you, please, because it's causing bullying in schools. It's making kids unhealthy. They're scared all the time, and they think that a piece of cloth over the face is going to protect them and not the immune system that I gave them when they were born that's kept them alive all through this. They're not even affected by this stuff. And we're traumatizing them with these masks and scaring them and telling them they're the vectors of illness. This is terrible. And also, we should all trust our own immunity. And please, we really need to look into our natural immunity. All these confirmed cases don't take into account the people who were at home and got sick and got over it. So these rates for hospitalization and death aren't accurate because it doesn't take into account all of the population that has had COVID. So maybe a study, oh, I still have 30 seconds. Maybe a study that goes into this. Santa Clara County did a study on this. I know this is the city, but maybe y'all can push on the BOS and get a study like this done here, because we need some accurate numbers. And we're definitely not getting them from the NIH or the CDC or the NIAID or the WHO.
Thank you, Emily. Please refrain from clapping. Well said. I read that in the beginning. I don't know if you were here. Okay, does it look like we have some people on Zoom? We do. I can't see the phone number from here.
Phone number last 4 digits 0326 with your hand up. Would you like to go ahead?
This is Charles Wilson. I wanted my wife had some separate comments there. But anyway, I wanted to comment in response to the Humboldt Bay fire. They respond to a lot of the pedestrian accidents. And I've been a pedestrian for all my life. You go through Eureka at nighttime. A lot of these people wear dark clothing. You can't see where they are. We got more darkness now. It's getting a little lighter because we're after the solstice and everything there. But the thing is, it's dark fairly early at 5 o'clock, and you can't see these people. I don't know if Humboldt Bay Fire would be involved in this actually, but the thing is, it would be nice if these night people would wear some sort of reflectors on their hands or their cuffs and their pant cuff and for their arm and maybe around the collar. And it'd be nice to have some grant money or something like that to buy these relatively cheap things, which would allow you to see the person before you hit them. That was my comment. I assume we're not in the public comment period. We're still talking about Humboldt Fire. But anyway.
Actually, no, Mr. Wilson, we are in regular public comment.
Oh, okay, because you passed me over in that. So anyway.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
Oh, okay. So anyway, I had a separate comment for the public comment.
Sure.
And Freedom of Information Act request just released on December 29th, December 23rd, a few days ago, documented an email from the National Institutes of Health Director Collins on CDC's Fauci, to CDC's Fauci. Collins has admitted it is not a fake. The email is regarding the Great Barrington Declaration of last October 8th, 2020. Collins's email states the proposal from the three fringe epidemiologists who met with the secretary, I don't know who that, he must be somewhere up in the government there, seems to be getting a lot of attention, and even a co-signature from Nobel Prize winner Mike Levin of Stanford. There needs to be a quick and devastating published takedown of its premise. I don't see anything like that on the line yet. Is it underway? Now the declaration now has 900,000 signatures from professionals, and they're not all dummies. My daughter says to think of incompetence before conspiracy, but it's not.
Mr. Wilson, excuse me just one moment. Because I missed you at last public comment, I'm going to give you one more minute to conclude your comments. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, that's okay. I'll try to finish there.
Comment on presentations,
Oh,
but
okay.
I did see his hand. And
Okay, I did not. So can we give him 1 minute to wrap it up?
Sure.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. I'll
1
just
minute to wrap it up.
finish my sentence here. My daughter says to think of incompetence before conspiracy, but it sounds like Collins and Fauci have plenty of both. Fauci has stated that he is science. I heard him on the TV there. He says I am science, like he's a science god. But if Collins and Fauci are not had not tried to forcibly shut up and discredit any alternatives, investigations, or science other than government threats, force, and restrictions, thousands of our people might not have died. The same thing happened with AIDS. And so it's a shame that the government interferes with science, and we get what we get there. Now, I want to pass it over to my wife. She has some separate comments there.
Okay, so we're going to start the clock over for your wife. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This is Genevieve. Yeah, all this happened 2 years already, so we need to see another way to prevent the situation, like science. Whatever effective, we use the right treatment, not just use one treatment for all. That's why so many people die. And before all that, everybody should take care of themselves. Stay away from too much salt and sugar, and take your vitamin C, D, and zinc, plenty of fluid, and sleep. For the mask, we all know it doesn't work, but we all conditioned. Yeah. Who think about 3 years ago you had to wear a mask to go to the store, and you don't? And then children, they should be like follow order is right, but it's the right order. And God give you a nose to breathe, and you know it doesn't work. So, but we all follow like a sheep. That's why I always say, right now you have to wear a mask, like a facial diaper. Pretty soon, because it doesn't work, pretty soon you have to eat poop. You probably have to eat too, right? Anyway, take care of everybody to build their immune system up and respect each other. Don't call people names. Like, if you like to take the vaccine, take it. No mandate. That is not a law. Constitution is our law, the natural law. So we have to remember that and respect each other. And New Year's, love, it will prevail. Hate will perish. And then just be kind to people, and that's all it counts. And if some people cannot walk around, like one person, she has an excuse that the doctor gave it to her. A medical reason, she cannot breathe, but she cannot work. And or the boss said, you should write something, you are restricted to use mask. What's the difference? If you have a medical reason, you cannot wear a mask. That's it. If some people walk around huffing and puffing, and then you have to wear a mask, you probably increase the problem. They might have to call an ambulance. So anyway, this 2 years is enough. Mandate is not a law. We have to think about it. If everybody keep doing this, we'll become a genocide in the society. How many people take the vaccine and die? We don't want to fall in that category to be a genocide. So everybody, please, watch out your freedom. Love and freedom, everyone desire. Hate and tyranny, everyone despite. So make sure you're united and love your freedom. Okay? Thank you for the comment. And also, I appreciate that you give everybody a chances to make some comment. Like 3 minutes for 10 people, that's half an hour. Then get it done with. Another thing I want to address, you're building any housing in the Eureka?
So Genevieve,
low interest.
Genevieve,
huh?
Excuse me.
Yes?
Your 3 minutes are up, hon. Thank you so much for
Okay,
being
thank
here.
you. Okay, well, we should teach people to...
Thank you. Okay, do you see any other hands up there, Pam?
No, I do not. This is the one we just had. Yeah, and we're right at 30 minutes
Okay.
of public comment. So
Okay, so if there is further public comment, you can stay till the end of the meeting and we will reopen public comment. So we are now going to close public comment and move to the consent calendar. And I know that we are going to pull item F2 and item...
it's on our agenda. Please
So if you look at the agenda, it is written right on there, hon.
Last time you did that, it was only an additional 6 minutes, but you just go for it. We'll cap off your criticism.
It may have only been 6 minutes because we only had 2 people, but everybody has an opportunity to comment.
Probably 2 more.
Yeah, okay.
We're working class people who can't stay here for 3 hours.
We don't get paid like you guys.
To talk for 3 minutes. I mean, there are other people here that want to speak.
Thank you. And we're also going to be pulling F5. Public comment for now is closed. And if you'd like, you can come to the end of the meeting when we reopen it. I'm not going to argue with you. This is the way, it's been that way for at least 8 years. Oh, no, it's been that way for, excuse me, it's only been 6 months. Yeah. Thank you. So F5, City Manager Slattery.
Oh,
Good
do
eve-
you want to do the consent first? The balance of the consent
Oh,
calendar?
yes, I'm sorry.
No worries. So you are pulling F5 and which one?
F5 and F2.
Okay.
Maybe we'll wait a minute for it to calm down here. All right, so all matters listed under this category are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted in one motion unless a specific request is made by a council member, a consent. Oh, I'm sorry. Is my mic on?
Our system is not working as well as it should tonight, so we will speak up, but we apologize that the speakers aren't working.
I'll speak louder. You're welcome. Thanks for letting me know. All matters listed under this category are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted in one motion. We're talking about the consent calendar. Unless a specific request is made by a council member, the consent calendar will not be read. There will be no separate discussion of these items. However, if discussion is required, that item will be removed from the consent calendar and considered separately. And we are going to be pulling F2 and F5. And can we get a motion to approve the balance of the consent calendar?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Councilmember Moulton. Can we get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councilmember Bauer. All right, City Manager Slattery, F5.
Oh, I need to do
Oh,
it
yeah.
real quick. Councilmember Castellano?
Aye.
Councilmember Arroyo?
Aye.
Councilmember Moulton?
Aye.
Councilmember Bauer?
Aye.
Councilmember Burgell?
Yes.
Unanimous yes vote. Motion carries.
City Manager Slattery, do you have a presentation on F5?
There we go. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Happy 2022. So this item here was brought to council at the last future agenda items during the last council meeting. Mayor Pro Tem Burgell had brought this up and requested council's input as to whether or not council would like to consider a cannabis resolution similar to the resolution that was passed by the city of Rio Dell. So staff went out and got the resolution that was passed by Rio Dell, made some modifications so it suits City of Eureka's purposes, and that is what is in front of you guys tonight. And so staff's recommendation is to adopt a resolution recommending Governor Newsom and the California legislature immediately eliminate or significantly reduce current cultivation taxes. The modifications that were made between Rio Dell's resolution and the City of Eureka's resolution was to remove any reference to a local tax, because the City of Eureka, as council is aware, has no local tax on cannabis. And so other than that, the resolution is identical to what Rio Dell had passed previously. So with that, staff is available for any questions or comments related to this item.
Thank you for working on this. Do we have any questions from council? Councilmember Moulton?
Forgive the rather basic question, but I understand we don't have a cannabis tax in Eureka, but cannabis dispensaries are still subject to just our regular sales tax. Is that correct?
Correct. They are.
Since we don't have an additional one.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, we'll take this out to the public for public comment. Is there anyone from the public that's come to comment on this item?
Natalie DeLapp is on.
Okay. Natalie?
Hi, good evening, City Council members. This is Natalie DeLapp. I am the Executive Director of Humboldt County Growers Alliance and also a Eureka City resident. I want to thank you, council members, for bringing this item forward. I speak on behalf of over 275 cannabis operators that are in Humboldt County, and I can clearly state that this kind of motion and leadership is necessary. Humboldt County's cannabis industry, as well as operators across the state, are really struggling. The price per pound for cannabis flower has plummeted below the cost of production, and these state cultivation taxes remain constant regardless of the market conditions. And I do want to let people know that Senator Mike McGuire has committed to bringing forward legislation that will bring many of the stakeholders, or I guess all of the stakeholders, to the table to see what type of cannabis tax relief strategies can be deployed on the state level. I would encourage people to take a look and remind ourselves that there is also a local cannabis cultivation tax at the county level that is also a fixed rate tax. This tax was enacted by voters in 2016 when the price of cannabis per pound was 4 times higher. And while it seems like a very simple tax of $1, $2, and $3 a square foot, that too is becoming an overly onerous tax. And so I just ask people in this community to be aware of the value that Humboldt's cannabis farmers bring to this community, the environmental remediation that they've brought to this land, the fact that they voluntarily chose to come into compliance and out of the green closet to become participating, tax-paying members of society. So just thank you, City of Eureka, and thank you for my opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Natalie. Do you see any other hands?
No.
Okay, anyone from the audience? Okay, if no, we'll bring it back to council. Do we have any comments or a motion? Councilmember Bauer.
I don't know if staff looked up kind of what the state's bringing in taxes roughly. I mean, is it decreasing, increasing? What's kind of the general condition of the state tax?
So I can't say that staff did look into that. If council directs staff to, we could look into that and bring it back. We're not aware of specifically what the revenue generated from the taxes, not only currently, but historically.
Okay. Councilmember Arroyo, did I see your hand up?
Well, it's especially good to hear that Senator McGuire has committed to examining this and looking for solutions. I'm in favor of this. I'm sure that, at a different time, it seemed to make a lot of sense. And at this point in our cannabis economy in Humboldt, I just don't believe it does. So I'll move approval of the resolution as written.
I'll second.
Oh, go ahead, Kim.
Did you capture that? Did you have a comment? No, I was second. Oh, go ahead. Oh, well, I'll take it. Any other council remarks?
Yeah, I got
Member Bauer?
I can't pull I have the resolution pulled up. I don't know if it's possible to look at on the big screen or if you still have it. I know there's been it's been a lot of talk locally about supporting the small farmer, right? Those that have kind of been around a long time, what they call legacy farms or something like that, and it just seems that would be the more appropriate path to take for this, to a blanket resolution that includes, massive farms in Santa Barbara. Are we really concerned about that here in our jurisdiction? Seeing them not pay taxes. A lot of tax revenue goes to preventative youth prevention programs. So how are we going to fill that hole if we eliminate this tax? So I just see a lot of things that aren't really, it's a challenge to say we should pull this whole tax or we should request that when it does do a lot of good for the community, for the environment. So I'm not in support of of something that says completely eliminate the tax. I think it's an important revenue stream, and I just don't see us magically coming up with to fill that gap. Anybody wants to talk about that, but I would be in favor of something that talks about the small farmer.
Yeah, so if you'll hand it back to me. So the reason that I brought this forward was for the cottage farmer. I think that it takes a lot of courage and foresight to be willing to step out of the light or step out into the light after many, many years of not being. And I feel frankly that these cottage farmers really have taken, a lot of hits because there was no follow through. And it's really too bad because they are a local business that really builds our city and have done a lot of great things in our city. And they're just a regular local business, just like, going to the shoe store. So I too, I support this resolution. The intention was to push this forward toward cottage gardeners or cottage farmers or the smaller farmers, 10,000 acres and below. I don't know that it would hurt to continue just doing the whole thing, but the intention in the beginning was cottage farmers. So if anybody else has any thoughts on that? Councilmember Castellano?
I tend to agree with that input, that a focus on smaller farms, cottage farmers, is more important than relieving tax burden for large scale farms. It seems like that we have experts in our community that could give some insight on how to include that wording in the letter, or that staff could just make that slight adjustment.
So if we were to make that adjustment, would people be interested in doing that? Yes? I guess
I'd be
that's not the right
supportive.
question to ask. Pardon me?
Oh, I think as the maker of the motion, I would be supportive of a modification along those lines, but I think we'd need some input about what the acreage would look like or how to define that.
Okay. So I'm curious, we do have, let me have Councilmember Moulton weigh in.
I'm curious if I'm concerned about a tax that comes into effect at a certain level of growth. Is there a precedent for that sort of thing where a business would be subject to higher taxes just by simply being bigger or more successful, a higher tax rate? I don't know who I'm asking that question of.
I'm not personally aware of an industry where that happens. I don't know if the city attorney has any input on that.
Well, one way of looking at it is as a progressive tax. In other words, there would be an extremely low level of tax or perhaps no level of tax below a certain economic level. I'm not sure that acreage totally captures it, but then at higher levels of income or gross sales, if you will, there could be some increase. So that's not unheard of in that respect.
Yeah,
So,
Councilmember Brigel, I believe we discussed the graduated tax as being a possibility, and I don't know if would be based on square footage or amount of flour produced, or what that would look like.
City Manager Slattery, we do have an expert on Zoom. Maybe she might be able to answer this question. Ms. DeLapp, would you care to address what we're discussing as far as the cottage gardener type situation?
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Thank you all again for the opportunity to speak. There is no definition for cottage farmer. That's not a defined term. I would say 10,000 square feet is what is considered, quote, small by the state of California. However, 10,000 square feet of pure outdoor is very different than 10,000 square feet of high intensity mixed light, or even mixed light 1 or 2. I would just really urge you all to not get into the proverbial weeds of size. It is most likely what will happen is the tax that is able to be brought forward through the state legislative process will be revenue neutral, to Councilmember Bauer's comment, which means that the tax would move from the cultivation side to the excise tax paid by consumers at the end. I would just strongly encourage you to send your support to the governor as well as Senator McGuire, and then leave the details of who gets what tax break at when and what recipients to the various committees that this legislation is going to have to go through this year.
Thank you. Councilmember Arroyo.
Although I did make the motion, I am wondering if a modification that suggests or strongly urges that the state immediately convene a group to explore reduction of the taxes, if something like that is something we could all get behind. I mean, really, this is this is flagging the issue to our senator who already knows about it and our governor who probably already knows about it, and showing our support to our community. So, I mean, whatever it, I think because it's, I don't want to say it's a gesture, but you know, this isn't something we can control. So in a way it is a gesture of support, and it would be nice if we could come up with something that we could all agree on. So if a modification like that would do the job, I'm completely open to that kind of modification.
So what you're suggesting is a sense of urgency in the resolution? Is that what I'm hearing from
I'm suggesting that on in the last sentence of page 2, you know, if and perhaps what I'm asking for is input, but if we were to modify that by saying we strongly urge the state to immediately look at this issue and find ways to make it more equitable and, you know, and reduce the taxes given the state of the cannabis economy, you know, something like that would, I think, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Councilmember Bauer, but you're saying, you know, that eliminating it completely doesn't sound like a fit to you, and I can understand that completely. So I'm wondering if we were to modify that sentence, if that would get closer to something we could all support.
Yes. I think that makes sense.
So as the seconder of the motion, I'd be willing to support that as well. Any further comments? Are we ready to vote?
Could, excuse me, Mayor, is there any way I could get some clarification on what that looks like? Because it's not very clear to me.
It's not very clear. So perhaps Councilmember Arroyo, you could repeat.
I'll take a stab at saying that whole sentence with my modification. So now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Eureka, that I guess it should say that the City Council of the City of Eureka strongly urges Governor Newsom and the California Legislature to immediately convene a body to examine the taxation of cannabis businesses and to significantly reduce the current cultivation taxes.
Thank you.
I'm good with that. I know that they are working to convene with all the stakeholders at this time, but I don't think the sentence would really hurt that at all. All right. So is staff clear? Yeah, okay.
Would it meet the spirit of the modification if we added the phrase reduce and make more equitable cannabis taxes?
Thank you, Bob. I meant to say that and then it got lost in my repeating of it. Yes, I personally think that is more the spirit of what I meant.
Okay. So with that modification,
All
Yes,
right.
that is perfect. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
are we ready to vote?
Councilmember Castellano,
Aye.
Councilmember Arroyo,
Aye.
Councilmember Moulton.
Aye.
Councilmember Bauer.
I don't know if I can abstain. I don't think that's possible, Bob.
It's a no.
It's a
if you
no.
abstain.
No.
And Councilmember Burgell.
Yes.
4 yes votes. Councilmember Bauer dissenting. Motion carries.
Thank you. And now we have something exciting. I'd like to introduce our new police chief. Todd Jarvis, we will be swearing you in.
First, we need to vote to appoint.
Oh,
the
doggone it.
from the appointment.
Okay. Onward. All right, let me find that. So, does anybody from council have any questions? Mm-hmm. Did you want to say anything, Miles, so that we can just do regular protocol?
Yeah, I think that we're going on there. We can vote on the appointment that the city manager has made. And I'd just like to welcome Chief Jarvis to the city of Eureka. He's said all the right things when he's gotten here. He thinks it's a wonderful place, and I'm sure he'll echo that statement. It's great having him here. And we look forward to this transition and getting something in more permanent. So,
Wonderful. Okay, now does anybody have any questions? Are there any comments from the public? Oh, excuse me. Councilmember Castellano.
Thank you. I'm just curious, and welcome to potential interim chief Jarvis. How long? I've gotten a little feedback from the public about this. I'm just curious how long the interim process will be, or could you speak just a little bit to the overall process?
so currently, right now, we are meeting with a consulting firm to start developing the job description and put it out for recruitment. Right now, the agreement that we have with Chief Jarvis, pending council's approval, is 6 months. And so we intend on having about a 6-month process for the recruitment of a permanent police chief.
Great. Okay. Is there anybody from the public that would like to comment on this item? All right, seeing none, I'll bring it back to council for a motion.
I'll move staff recommendation.
I'll second. Can we vote?
Okay. Councilmember Castellano.
Aye.
Councilmember Arroyo.
Aye.
Councilmember Moulton.
Aye.
Councilmember Bauer.
Aye.
Councilmember Burgell.
Yes.
Unanimous yes vote. Motion carries.
Okay.
Welcome to Eureka.
Welcome. So now we'll have you come up here, and I get to swear somebody. This is my first time swearing somebody in. Very exciting. Hi. I think we're going to come right over here. I'm going to stay on the high end, okay? And welcome. Okay, so the oath of office. So you're going to repeat after me, and thank you for putting your hand up. I, Todd Jarvis, do solemnly affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California. That's too much. That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies,
and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies,
foreign and domestic.
foreign and domestic.
That I will bear truth, faith, allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California and the charters of the City of Eureka.
Constitution of the State of California and the charters of the City of Eureka.
That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation
I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties
I will well and faithfully discharge the duties
upon which I am about to enter in the capacity of police chief for the city of Eureka.
upon which I'm about to enter in the capacity of police chief for the city of Eureka.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you very much.
Congratulations. Hope to meet with you sometime. And Interim Chief Jarvis, would you like to make a few comments? Welcome.
It is an honor to be here tonight with you. I spent 35 years in law enforcement in San Diego, retired in November of 2019, right before the profession changed drastically, and many people were texting me how lucky I was to be out of law enforcement, and I felt the opposite at that time. I felt like I have all this experience and I wasn't able to share it. And so when I received the call from city manager, it's truly a blessing to be able to be here with you. I've been here 4 days. I've met nothing but wonderful people. I'm really enjoying the area. I'm looking forward to working with all of you, with the community, and I've been very impressed with the level of the professionalism within that department, and I'm looking forward to working with the men and women of the Eureka Police Department as well. So thank you for having me, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So moving on to reports and action items.
I think we're at ordinances and resolutions.
Ordinances and resolutions. Little rusty. It's been a while. Okay. Yeah. So we'll move on to the property transfer. City Manager Slattery.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. Assistant City Manager Powell, would you please cue up that presentation? So this this item was brought to council last council meeting on the 18th of December. This is back again for council's consideration. There was some concerns about the timing and the time of the year, and council elected to bring this back, and so staff went back and did some modifications, and we'll present to get on this. So just for a little background, this is a property transfer between the city of Eureka and a private property owner. For background related to this, in the month of May, on May 3rd, 5th, and 6th of 2021, public meetings were held related to affordable housing projects on city-owned parking lots. Approximately 70 community members were in attendance at each of those meetings, and there was an overall concern about the loss of parking and its effect on businesses. Based on those concerns, staff announced at each of the meetings to look at alternatives to the parking lot developments, including trading properties that have the ability to develop the same number of affordable units, and also with the approval of the State Housing and Community Development, or HCD, approval. So what was outlined was the process during those meetings, is also with those individuals that contacted the city with property to consider for transferring. We needed to verify the zoning, verify the allowable units using the same criteria that we used in the housing element, and then also receive HCD approval. So next slide, please. So as far as the property transfer, what's going would be transferred is the city-owned parking lots at 4th and G Street, 5th and H Street, and 5th and K Street. The city would receive in return the property that's located directly behind Fairfield Street, between Harris and Henderson. One of them has a building on it currently. That's 1200 West Harris, and then there's 3 parcels adjacent to that going to the north. Next slide, please. So these are the 3 city-owned parking lots. On the far left is 4th and G, in the middle is 5th and H, and on the far right is 5th and K. Next slide, please. These are the properties that the city is looking to transfer pending council's approval. It's the 4 parcels that are outlined in red there, like I said, behind Fairfield Street, between Harris and Henderson Street. Next slide. So as far as the tabulations for the number of units that would be allowable, the 3 city-owned lots in the housing element were listed to generate 45 very low-income units and 20 low-income units. Utilizing the same method that we did for the housing element, staff determined that the Pearson property and development, and then once again, that's the private property owner transfer form, which is a PPD or Pearson property and development. The number of units that could be generated from this property would be 59 very low income units and 45 low income units. Once again, these units are derived using the same method of calculating as staff did for the housing element, using those numbers based on the acreage and the zoning of the area. Just like the Link properties, obviously they were very conservative number of units. A developer could develop more units on both the city-owned lots as well as the Pearson property. For the PPD properties, the developer could use infill incentives and achieve more units. And for the city-owned properties, the developer could use a higher floor area ratio and develop more units out of that property. But either way, you look at the potential units, the PPD properties allow for more affordable units than the city-owned properties, especially in factoring in constraints on the city-owned properties with adjacent buildings. This transfer will definitely increase the number of units as proposed in the 2019 and 2020 housing element. Sure, no net loss. Next slide, please. As far as the housing element, when we first passed the housing element, we had 12 original properties. Next slide, please. What happened after we passed the housing element was that we determined after the fact that 2 of the properties were not allowed for development because of deed restrictions on them for some grant funding. One of those was the Cooper Gulch property, and the other one was the Sheriff's Wood lot. So this is our current inventory here. We only have 10 properties. We did reach out to HCD, and we replaced one of those properties that are in E Street with the 2nd and L Street. So right now, next slide, please. The loss of the Cooper Gulch and the Sheriff's Woodlight properties lost us 60 units. The Link project, by them increasing the floor area ratio and getting more units, gained us 44 units. So currently, right now, we're at a deficit of 16 units. And once again, this is all contingent upon what the developer and the proposals that we get for these properties. Those numbers that are put into the housing elements are conservative typically, but it doesn't mean that a developer could come in with an intention of having, 3 and 4 bedroom units and end up getting less units. And so we definitely want to hedge on the side of making sure there's no net loss, and having that extra cushion there is really important. Next slide, please. So through this process, not only from the beginning of this process, even back to the housing element, but all through this process, we've had a lot of community service concerns related to this property transfer. Some of those community concerns are the proximity to services, the difference between the proximity to services between the city-owned lots and the Pearson property. The other concerns are related to how much developable area there is actually on the PPD properties. Another concern was property values and the disparity or equivalent of property values. Another 2 concerns based on the agreement were the new utility hookup, the waiving of impact fees for those, and then also the indemnity language that's included in the agreement. And also we received a litigation threat from the Coalition for Responsible Transportation Priorities and Vernon Price, who consulted with North Coast Legal Services, and we received a letter, and I'd like to address some of those concerns. So next slide, please. So the services comparison. So what staff did for this one is we basically looked at all of the parking lots and looked at the nearest service adjacent to that. So when you see parking lot listed, that is one of the 3 parking lots being proposed for transfer, and they're distance away from whatever services is listed. So it's not the same parking lot, it's the one that's closest to give a comparison of all 3 lots to the Pearson property, because obviously the Pearson property is all contiguous. So as far as the grocery store, the Pearson property is 1,280 feet away, and this is as the flow cries. It's, excuse me, not cries, as the crow flies. Not going through the blocks or anything like that. But the Pearson property is 1,280 feet away from Winco. The 4th and G property is 1,580 feet away from the co-op. So that's the closest proximity to a grocery store. Between a park and playground, the Pearson property is 1,360 feet away from Highland Park. For the parking lot, 5th and K is about 1,760 feet away from 2030 Park. Excuse me, not 2030, Ross Park. Sorry. The bus stop, the Pearson property is about 1,000 feet away from the nearest bus stop on Harris, but there's 3 that are in that general vicinity. Here at 5th and K, the parking lot is obviously about 10 feet away from the parking lot there. I will say that in the discussions with Humboldt Transit Authority, their best access, according to them, and most frequent access to mass transit is on the Harris and Henderson corridor, and is better than the 101 corridor for mass transit, according to the elementary school. The proximity for Pearson property is 1,620 feet away from Alice Burney. The parking lot property is 7,900 feet away, the city of Eureka's 5th and K, from Lafayette, which is the nearest elementary school. Pharmacy, it's 1,200 feet away for CVS there at the Eureka Mall. From the Pearson property and from the parking lots, it's 3,400 feet to the, I believe, CVS on West. What is it? Myrtle West, yeah, the CVS on Myrtle West. And then a community garden, the Pearson property is 970 feet away from the community garden on Henderson, and the 5th and H property is 4,000 feet away from the 15th and California community garden. So there's services comparison from the different properties that are being offered for transfer. The next concern was the developable area and how much developable area is on the project. So city staff looked at GIS, determined the slopes, and took out anything that was over 27.49 in slope. And that area in green is not only taking that into account, but also a site visit with our chief building official to make sure that that area is developable, as well as the city has the 2 geotechnical reports that were done by Pearson property. And staff has reviewed that and determined that the site is appropriate for development in these areas. So there has been due diligence to make sure that not only the site itself was looked at in person, but also the geotechnical reports that were supplied by the property owner for a previous development was looked at. Next slide, please. The other community concern was about the appraisals of the properties. We went through this last time. The city-owned properties had a certified appraiser look at it. It appraised at $216,000. 5th and H and 4th and G, we didn't have a specific appraisal, but they're basically in the same condition, in the same location, and have the same zoning. So utilizing that cost per acre, 5th and H is worth $208,000. 4th and G is worth about $294,000. Once again, a certified appraiser looked at the Pearson properties, and those are the values for all of the parcels listed for the cities that the city would receive if council approves it. So it's about 4 times the amount of value based on those certified appraisals for the Pearson properties. Next slide, please. So the utilities for services in the agreement, the city has waived the impact fees because for a property that the current building on Harris Street is going to be moved to. So the current office building for Pearson is on West Harris currently right now. And that is going to be lifted and moved to an adjacent property that is owned by the property owner. That property currently has a water and sewer service to it, and we waive the impact fee because it's basically a trade. Where they have one currently now, we're going to give them one there, and then the other extra water and sewer hookup is for a future potential ADU unit that the developer may want to put on there. And currently, we, based on our ordinance, we have no impact fees for that. So it's basically a wash. The other issue that was raised, another issue that was raised with the indemnity clause in the agreement. City attorney has reviewed that and is comfortable with the indemnity for the city, mainly because that indemnity is really based on a 60-day inspection period where environmental assessments will be done both by the properties. If there are any concerns or concerns for liability, we can stop the transfer from happening and move on. And so based on that, we feel that the indemnity is not a problem and not going to pose any potential liabilities for the city of Eureka. On the next slide. And there's the litigation threats from Legal Services in Northern California. They made 3 claims that this property transfer violates the 2019 to 2027 housing. They also claim that it violates the Surplus Land Act, and finally that it violates the no net loss law. Unfortunately, the city has been in violation with its housing element since the day it was adopted. As I stated earlier, staff unknowingly included 2 properties into the approved housing element that were deed restricted for use as housing. Because of this, the approved housing element has not been sufficient to meet our regional housing need allocation. This property transfer is a method the city is utilizing to rectify the loss of those units that were inappropriately included in the housing element. This process has been discussed with Housing and Community Development, HCD, throughout the year. Staff met with HCD in May and August of this year and has had many email communications to discuss this transfer. So it has been vetted with them, and this is an attempt to address the issue with the housing element that we're currently in. As far as it violating the Surplus Land Act, staff has also discussed this transfer in relation to the Surplus Land Act with HCD and received an approval from IMES of the HCD Public Lands team, stating that he concludes that the disposition of the properties as described in the resolution before council meets the requirements of exempt surplus land under Government Code Section 54221 F1C. And the final claim that it violates the no net loss, as I discussed earlier in the presentation, this transfer definitely does not violate the no net loss law. On December 8th, the city received a technical assistance letter from HCD. That same day, staff responded with a timeline and explanation of how we intend to move forward, including all aspects of this property transfer. The city received a response from HCD stating, quote, "Thank you for the timely response. HCD will continue to monitor the city's progress." So I just wanted to address all those community concerns before we went into public comment. And with that, staff is available for any questions that council may have.
Thank you, City Manager Slattery. Do we have any questions? Councilmember Moulton.
I saw you were addressing property values, but that was the value of the properties involved. I spoke with some of the neighbors, some of my neighbors there on Fairfield, and they, a few of them brought up concern about their property values. I know we don't have a crystal ball here, but can anyone speak to the likely impact on the property values of the houses that are like this goes in on those lots?
So I don't have that knowledge and could not speculate as to what impact that would have. I do know that this property has been zoned residential for a very long time. I couldn't tell you when, but definitely since our last general plan update. There has already been multiple public meetings related to this that included notifications to all of the property owners within a 300-foot radius of this. There's been, I believe, 4 total meetings, one related to an easement vacation, related to a lot line adjustment, as well as related to a design review. And all of them were notified during that. So I can't speak to what effect it would have on the property values, but I do know that, this is zoned residential, and whether the city develops it or somebody else develops it, it will be developed.
So what I'm hearing is that someone is going to build on this. The question is whether it's going to be a private entity or the city arranging for the particulars.
Yes, and I would also say that, with the city being the developer there, some of those concerns expressed, obviously the view is not one of them, but other concerns that are expressed, the city has a lot more control over that development. There are public improvements in the right of way that need to happen when a vacant property is developed, but typically that only is around the property itself and doesn't extend to outside of the property. So sidewalk gaps, mass transit crossings, those type of things, the city has a lot more control with the developer as far as addressing some of those concerns.
And I don't mean to make you address a rumor, but has anyone brought forth any legitimate restrictions related to their property, such as view rights or anything where some folks on the street were saying that they because of their deed, they have a right to the view behind their house? I know that's a thing that exists in some places. Is there any reason you think that this exists in this property and that therefore?
I am not aware of anything. The one area that I would know that does exist is in the coastal zone.
Mm-hmm.
In the coastal zone, there is a view shed stipulation about different developments, and we have corridors in the coastal zone define those view sheds that you have to have. This is not in the coastal zone, and so that wouldn't be applicable. I don't know if the city attorney knows of any others.
I do not, but that is one of the things that we would search for in our due diligence, is to find anything like that which could inhibit the ability to develop this property. If there is something substantial, that would be a factor in deciding whether to go ahead or not.
Meaning the due diligence that has already been done?
The 60-day period that could come up.
Gotcha. Thank you.
But I would say that this property has been before planning staff and the planning in the planning process, and I don't think anything like that has ever come up. So.
Okay, that was all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Castellano.
Councilmember Castellano?
Thank you. Just one question. There are currently other properties that could be used to make up for our net loss. Could you speak to those?
So there's one thing that hasn't come to council yet, which is the 3G properties. Right now, it's early on in development. It's dependent upon the other types of housing that's so that one's up in there. The other property is across the street from the 6th and Myrtle development for Danco. That property is in the coastal zone, and so while it's zoned service commercial, the problem with developing a lot of units out of that is that we don't have any variances for parking, and so speaking with planning staff, they're thinking maybe 4 units on that property, depending on what could happen. It's a pretty small parcel. And so those are the 2 that staff is aware of right now. At least 2 projects. It's 3 different parcels. I don't know if that's going to reach and achieve what we need to get to. One of the issues that we do have, and we haven't got a clear definition from HCD, is that the sheriff's lot property had a designation of 40 very low income units on one property. And I think that's something that's very concerning for staff, and a reason why we'd like to have as many properties as possible, because if we are held to the ratio of very low and low income, that's going to be a sticking point, because a lot of these, at least the Link property that came to us, as well as the other proposals for that RFP, had a mix of very low and low income. So I think that would be an issue as well.
You good? Councilmember Bauer.
I saw that we looked at the geologic issues, and I think we've all received emails questioning some possible geologic instability, but it seems from the map that that's really not on any of the parcels. I saw one little sliver where there might be some instability there, but I guess my question is, from a engineering standpoint, I'm sure it could be addressed if development were to occur, on a little tiny piece of instability.
Yeah, so I mean, it has a lot to do with the development. Obviously, the development that was different than what we would be developing. But based on that, the range that we looked at, all of that area is developable. Now, if we wanted to build a 30-story building, which we can't do in that area, that was facetious, so please don't take that anywhere. But obviously, that would have an effect. But all of the area that there is developable, yes.
Excellent. Thanks.
Any other questions from council at this time? Okay, seeing none, we're going to open this item up for public comment. So is there anybody in the audience that would like to come forward?
Good evening. Nicholas Cole. I wanted to come up here and voice my support for this, mainly from a point of view of really recognizing we need affordable housing, and we need it soon. We've needed it for years. And so if this is a transfer that allows progress and allows a structure to be built that can be actually utilized sooner than later, I would urge you to move forward. I recognize the skepticism. I share it. But there's a definite sense of need that I want to communicate, and I hope you keep in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Do you see any hands on Zoom, Pam?
I do. I see Thomas Wheeler.
Hi, Tom.
Hi, thank you, Council. Thank you also for moving this agenda item to today. I appreciate that. It's enabled me to provide you with public comment. I urge you to reject the proposed land swap and to maintain the strategy outlined in the city's housing element. While the land swap solves an immediate political problem for the city, it reduces the total stock of land open for housing development. And I urge you to take the long view. First, both properties are good for housing development, and both are capable of producing roughly a similar number of housing units. City staff and I have disagreed vehemently on this, and you've received emails where we talk about our numbers, so I won't go over those again. But roughly, I believe that each site is capable of reasonably producing over 100 dwelling units, which is a fantastic thing that we can add to our city, and I'm excited about that. While both areas are capable of producing an equal number of housing units, the proposed swap would remove 3 potentially productive parcels from our future housing stock. It's clear from the history of this swap that the swap is intended to prevent the conversion of parking lots to housing, as Redwood Capital Bank has a vested interest in maintaining a parking lot near their 4th Street establishment, among other reasons. While there is nothing in the swap that would technically encumber these parcels with some sort of a deed restriction prohibiting its development as housing, it's likewise clear that these are not to be turned into housing. As City Manager Miles Slattery said in today's meeting, by contrast, whether or not the city develops the Pearson's lot, someone is going to. It is zoned for housing development, and given population pressures and housing pressures in our area, it's likely that this is going to be developed. There was already a proposal from Pearson Development to develop this slot. So I think that what we're doing is we're functionally removing 3 areas in a really prime part of our city from future housing development. And I think that that's a waste. I am glad to hear that there are other folks in support of housing. I'm glad that the City Council has routinely affirmed its desire to build more housing in the city. And I'm glad that our conversation here is talking about how we can create the most number of housing units. And I think that that is achieved by maintaining our current housing strategy. Lastly, to this issue of parking that kind of drove the conversation in the first place, the technical advisory element of the housing element outlined that parking can still be retained on the city lots by building above in the airspace above these parking lots. And we can still maintain a vast majority of the parking that is currently available. I think that this is something that we should try
Thank you, Tom. Your time is up. Thanks for being here. Is that
John Yelsinkaya?
John?
Hi.
Hi, John.
Hi. Thank you. Also, I would like to also thank the three council members who moved this to the new year. I really appreciate that. And so to get this chance to just address this, I'm in support of, well, first of all, I just listened to the last meeting in the last couple of days, so I haven't, I don't have time to prepare or anything like that. So this might sound disjointed, but I want to get to a couple of points. I do support strongly keeping the lots that Eureka owns right now. I agree with what Mr. Wheeler just said, and a couple of things that come up from that discussion a couple of weeks ago, and that is this idea that we're getting 4 times the value, whereas the Pearson's property is worth $3 million, and ours has been our 3 lots have appraised at about $700,000. I mean, that just doesn't make sense, because why would a for-profit company, give up almost $2 million? There's a reason. There's value there. And I think that value is associated with location. This is basically a real estate swap. And I think that location for low income housing is just perfect. It's right where you want it to be, in the middle of our major district in our town. So that's number one. And then just another thing that strikes me as weird from that conversation a couple weeks ago is that obviously the big political issue on this is parking. A lot of residents don't want to lose parking downtown. And I didn't hear anything where, in fact, I heard last week or a couple weeks ago that we don't have any guarantees that Pearson's would be protecting this for parking, in perpetuity, and that goes into the location. They now own this property. We would lose it, and they can, maybe not in the next 5 years or 10 years, but 20 years or 30 years down the road, they can do what they like with it. I just, I think we're sidestepping. I don't think the parking is really the issue. The issue is where we're going to place our low-income housing, and I would really like that to be downtown. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, John. There's someone else.
William Needham?
William Needham?
Sure. A couple of things. First, there's been a claim that the services that it's more appropriate to locate downtown than on the Pearson property. Yet if you looked at the list that was provided earlier by Mr. Slattery, almost every service is closer in the Pearson property than in the downtown property. Also, as I've mentioned previously, and people keep ignoring, 2 of the lots in the parking lots would literally be in the freeway corridor. You're talking about having small children raised in a freeway corridor. And with the lot, someone already discussed the level of pedestrian deaths in our county, putting kids in a freeway corridor is not a good thing. So finally, Mr. Wheeler had talked about said that there are roughly the same number of units could be developed. Simply look at the physical footprint. The square footage for the Pearson properties is twice that of the Eureka lots. It doesn't take a mathematician to tell you that you're going to be able to put more buildings on properties that are twice as large as that are half as large. So with that, I'll finish my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, William. There's another. Bob Judavine.
Hello, Council. Thanks so much for your hard work tonight. My name is Bob Judavine. I'm a 35-year resident here in Eureka, member of the 3rd Ward. I love Eureka. I love our old town. And I owned a business in Old Town for many years on 2nd and F Street. Someone on the call earlier mentioned supporting local businesses. And I've heard this conversation couched as housing versus parking. And that's just not the conversation at all. We're a small town. You know, infill, the idea of infill, I absolutely get it. And there are instances where it makes sense. But putting housing in the middle of a small town's, you know, basically on Main Street doesn't make sense. There aren't existing, you know, where I've seen it before in San Jose and other large cities, and you've got existing parking structures, you've got 24/7 mass transit, and housing makes more sense in those areas, at least for singles and retired people and empty nesters. You know, our small businesses deserve our support, right? I think everybody in Eureka gets that small businesses help drive our economy, and supporting them is a big deal. And if you remove access for ready parking, you're really limiting people's ability to patronize those shops. It was important to me when I owned a business there that people could get to my shop. And while I heard the comment that, you know, conceivably they would add parking as part of the structures on site, there's also no requirement that they do so. And in fact, not even provide parking for the number of units that would be built. So maybe to conclude, and perhaps the thing that's most important to me is, as a grandfather, you know, I think a lot about where my kids and where my grandkids grow up. I would not want them to grow up in downtown Eureka. I just wouldn't. Someone mentioned it's on a freeway corridor. It's busy. It's not an ideal place to have kids running around. So I urge you to approve this land swap. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And next up we have, is it Jeff? Jeff Slack.
Thank you, Council. And I would just like to echo Mr. Judevine's comments. You know, the proposed land that's here at Pearson Property Development is already zoned residential. We don't have to contort ourselves to fit housing into a services district, basically our main downtown area, where a more suitable location is available. This is just what that land swap does. So thank you. That's my comments.
Thank you, Jeff. Do you see any more hands, Pam?
I don't, there's one person coming in. I don't see any more hands.
Okay, so is there anybody from the public that would like to comment? Come on up, Cindy.
I'm here to offer my support for the trade of the 3 city lots for the Pearson property on Harrison Fairfield. I'm in favor of affordable housing for all of our citizens, as I own several properties in this category and want all of us to have a good and prosperous life. The location of the property on Harrison Fairfield eliminates the safety hazard of both 4th and 5th Streets, which are the main thoroughfares through our city. Families would not have to worry about the traffic and their children. Other amenities of the Pearson property would include the proximity of the Eureka Mall, which includes a pharmacy, major food outlet, and many other service stores. Veterans facilities would be 1 block away from the project. Social Security Administration would be within 5 blocks on a strip mall. The Bayshore Mall is also within walking distance of the proposed site. There are schools and parks within walking distance of this proposed site. The downtown Eureka parking lots cannot offer these kind of conveniences. The 3 lots include parking for Redwood Capital Bank, Arkley Performing Arts Center, Fifth and H parking lot, which accommodates parking for the post office, banks, and many essential services, and the City Hall parking lot. This trade would be a win-win for potential renters in the affordable housing complex, and both downtown and Old Town preserving their parking for customers, tourists, and business owners. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up.
Thank you, Council. My name is Bill McCauley. I'm a Eureka resident. I grew up in Eureka. I'm a business owner. Our accounting firm is on the corner of 4th and G Street, so we kind of have an oar in the water on this. The good news is that we talked about who should speak, and we ran through the idea that maybe all of us could come and talk, and then actually we decided to save everybody a little bit of pain. And I drew the short straw, so here we are. We strongly support this exchange transaction. We believe it is going to preserve important parking and result in an increase in housing units developed by the city. I think the choice is clear for the reasons that you've seen today, so I'm not going to rehash them. But I do want to say that parking is essential. I've heard people speaking out for business. Business isn't easy. Our business is right there on the corner of 4th and G Streets. Our clients come from all over the county. Eureka is the county seat. People come to Eureka to do business. And we located in that location because it was convenient, not only for what we do, but for our clients to get to us and be able to do it in a centralized way. So we have people who, we have thousands of clients who come from all over and come to Eureka. They come and park, meet with us, drop things off, pick things up. And so the idea that parking is particularly essential for our business. Most of our clients candidly skew a little older than average, and so longer walks are more of a problem. So we want to encourage, A, that you go forward with this swap, and B, we're concerned about plans for third and between G and H and the development there, and that potentially, if that occurs, we'd be concerned that would render our location unworkable for us because our clients wouldn't be able to get in and get out as conveniently as they're able to now. So we really are concerned about the notification process on that, and we would like to be involved in the discussion on it and hopefully be able to hear as a stakeholder in the value of that parking. We'd like to have an oar in the water. And I thank you for your time and for your consideration.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Budwig, and I am an employee of Redwood Capital Bank. Thank you again for your consideration of this property proposal, the swap. You've heard a lot of things about the positive reasons for moving forward with this. One of the things I know had been mentioned when we had the previous city council meeting was there was reference to third party, and someone brought it up here again tonight, but I wanted to elaborate on that a little bit, that Redwood Capital Bank does have a vested interest in this. Even though the property swap is with Pearson Properties, the intent is that Redwood Capital Bank will be leasing all 3 of those parking lots from Pearson Properties with the eventual intention of purchasing them. The reason I'm bringing this up is because I know that there were some concerns, as mentioned in the last city council meeting as well as this evening, that the possibility of development on those 3 parking lots. So we don't have any intention of development on those lots. We do strongly want to keep them as parking. We do understand the significance of keeping parking available in our downtown area. As Mr. McCauley just stated, that there is a significant need for it. Parking is already congested, and when you look at the development that's going in with the jail expansion, that parking is going to be going away. Shortly, they're going to start construction on that. I drove by there today. I think there's over 50 cars in that lot. And once they start construction, those 50 cars will be displaced to on-street parking. So that's going to further cause congestion into the downtown area. And reiterating the safety aspect of it, I agree strongly that this is the Pearson property location is a far superior place for residents, especially for families. And again, with the amenities being so close by, the only one that was an inferior amenity was the bus stop. But as Miles Slattery noted, that the Humboldt Transit Authority said that it actually is a much stronger transportation hub overall. So we appreciate your support of this project. I do feel it's a win-win, and I feel we're very fortunate that Pearson Properties is interested in doing this land swap. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Council and staff, thank you for considering this proposal. I think it is a win-win for not only the city, but the community. And I think the community owes a lot to our local bank, Redwood Capital, to step up and try and make this deal happen for everyone. One of the comments from the council was that there was somebody that was concerned in the neighborhood about property values and what that might be. And, you know, I had to think about that same thing because I still own property surrounding that area. And my conclusion was that I trust the city to do a fantastic job, not only in the development aspect of it, but in the maintenance and management of it in the future. So I'm personally invested, continuing to stay invested right in that neighborhood. And so I'm not worried about that. As far as the value disparity, you know, as the city continues to potentially build on these parking lots, I assume that anything that's scarce, as we're seeing lately with inflation, prices will probably go up, and I suspect those property values on those parking lots will increase over time. But that gap is being taken care of by members of our business community who have stepped up to make that happen. So they value those parking lots as important assets to their ongoing business, and I agree with them with that completely. Some of the comments were, oh, it's going to be housing anyway. Why not just do both? Well, I have to remind them that the family has owned those lots for probably over 50 or 60 years, and they haven't been housing. And with the current market conditions and interest rates going up and inflation, I mean, lumber prices went up 65% since October. Steel prices are going up. Copper, wire. I can't get doors very easily. I can't get insulation. There's a number of things that make it a challenging thing. Not to mention during the COVID period where, you know, you couldn't force rent collection, but you couldn't evict folks, and then there's rent controls in the state. So all of those influences are reasons that a private enterprise might second guess the timing of developing housing. So I think the assumption that it's going to be housing anyway is not accurate. We've held the property for so long. Maybe my kids or grandkids will develop it. Anyway, I think infill is a perfect and equally, I think everybody agrees that infill is great for our community. The parking lots are being used right now for a purpose, and the existing land that we're proposing isn't being used at all. So let's agree to this transaction and see what we can do for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Is there anyone else from the audience? Mr. Toole?
I got to say, I'm against this project, but that was a good PSA for Pearson. If Pearsons have this property, why don't they develop to low income? Or sell it to Danco. Danco builds low-income housing. What are you going to do? This parking lot right out here, you come by there in the daytime, it's full. City employees. In fact, I think there's a slot there for the city manager. Where are they going to park? Where's the people going to park that you go to 3rd and G down there? Where are they going to park? So I think this is not a win-win for the city. And I don't believe that the state is going to bully the city so bad that we have to stoop to such trade swaps. And I'm totally against this project. We need these parking lots. And like I said, if the Pearsons have that lot, why don't they develop it instead of swapping good lots for the city down here? The businesses are hurting enough. They need these parking spots. So I highly suggest you reject this project.
Thank you, Bob. Come on up.
My name is Diane Dobbs. I'm the property owner at Harrison Fairfield. I have property right next to Mr. Pearson. I'll be honest with you, I came here, I want to thank you for putting this on my door because I didn't know. So I'm not very well informed at this moment. I did at first, I was kind of against it and started doing some research as quick as I could, and I came here and you just about convinced me. I'll be honest with you, you have a hard decision. It's not an easy one. I am all for low income and housing and all that. It's needed, you know, and so it's not that I'm, you know, it's like put it in somebody else's backyard. That's not the attitude. But I do want to warn you about a few things. I mean, it's kind of interesting that like somebody like Pearson wouldn't eventually build on, but I guess I'm hearing here that, you know, it's a benefit to Pearson's also. I guess that was one of my, it's like, why would they do this? But I do want to comment on, somebody said, what's the difference between somebody, Pearson's or somebody else building some housing there versus having very low income housing? If the very low income housing isn't maintained well and managed well, then yes, there is a big difference between having Pearson's nice, you know, middle income housing versus very low income housing. So that's just a concern. It's like, put it out there to you of like, okay, we're trusting in you to do a good job at this, right? Traffic, okay, traffic was brought up. Traffic at that corner is horrible. I recently moved in, so I have a duplex. I've been a landlord for 20 years. I've owned that property for 20 years. I moved in July. Just since July, there's been 8 accidents at the corner of Harrison Fairfield. And actually, I was going to stay till the public comment section to bring this up because it is something that needs to be addressed. There's no crosswalk at that corner. It's a 2-way stop sign. So when more housing goes in, there's going to be more traffic. That corner needs to be addressed. There is a lot of foot traffic. It is not a great place for kids to walk right now. It is not a place for children to be. I tell my potential tenants, I say to them, I don't recommend my property for children, even though I have it fenced, even though it's the traffic is very, very heavy at that corner. I think you could speed could be lowered. Okay, I'm sure I'm about all this time. Okay, that's good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, does anyone else from the audience care to comment on this item? And this item is the
I'd like
property transfer. One moment, I'll call on you in just a moment, Flora.
I want to make sure I know what I'm speaking about. Is this the parking lot and the housing project that's going on?
Yes, property transfer.
Okay, so I remember that along with requiring the COVID vaccines for all of your city employees, that there was something in there about requiring it for all of the contractors?
This topic now is about the property transfer, the actual
I'm wondering
land
about
transfer.
the contractors that you're using.
So COVID will be discussing during public comment, which will be at the end of the meeting. So if you want to keep your comments to the item we're talking about,
Okay, so you can't
I know that you
talk
didn't
about the contractors and whether you're requiring vaccination for the contractors you're using on this project?
City Manager Slattery.
It's public comment, not question and answer.
That is
period.
true. So,
The
you know what,
topic of
friend?
is about a land swap and not about construction. So we are keeping the comments directed at the land swap.
Okay, so
Thank
public
you.
comment is
At the end of the
entire
meeting. Yeah.
Okay, I got you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you. Thanks for being amenable. Okay, Ms. Hamanaka.
Good evening, council members. Thank you for having us. I'm for this proposal on affordable housing, but as a senior and a stroke survivor who now has to use public transportation, it's been difficult getting around. And this is probably, I'm really glad that I sat in on this meeting. As far as transportation, I would like to see transportation on Wabash going, and this would be helpful for the people if they move into the housing on Fairfield. You could have city bus and also school buses. Alleviate kids walking around and people walking around, and being able to utilize the transportation system would take a lot of keep cars off the road, and then persons like me could go to take the bus across Broadway, up around Warfinger Building into town, Dorney Center and beyond, Target, and walk around on the path, and also towards the hospital. That would alleviate a lot of, it'd be helpful for people that are low income and don't have cars, wouldn't need them. And the reason I say Wabash is I know that's a nice big street and there's no buses running on there. And I sure would like that because I have difficulty walking. But I also, yeah, that and the sidewalks is another issue, but there are a lot of broken sidewalks. It's very difficult walking around, and the
So, Ms. Hamanaka, I don't mean to interrupt you, but this conversation is about the property transfer.
Yes.
We will have public comment for these other items at the end of the meeting, and you're welcome to phone back then if that is.
But putting together the affordable housing and public transportation and even school buses would probably be workable, maybe in that area.
Yeah.
Into town and the hospital. So
great.
Anyways, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Okay, is there anyone else that would like to comment on this item? See any hands? Seeing none, I'm going to bring it back to council for comments and discussion and potentially a motion. Councilmember Bauer.
I hate to do this. Can we take a 5-minute recess before we get into this? Is that possible?
Sure. We actually usually take a break at 8 and it's 8:26. So why don't we come back at 8:34 or 5? 8:34 or 5. How's that? 5 minutes.
It's 8:20 right now.
Oh, that clock says 8:27. So let's come back in 10 minutes. 8:30. We will now resume the council meeting, provided everybody is masked in chambers, which it appears that we have one. Thank you. Okay, we'll bring it back for questions. Comments, excuse me. Do we have any comments from council regarding the property transfer? Councilmember Moulton.
I have a few comments. I was looking through some of the concerns that were sent in and the results of my talking with the neighbors. First, I just wanted to say that for the folks that were saying that Old Town would be a great place for housing, there will be housing in Old Town. There's way more lots that need to be developed and way more housing that needs to be built, and a good amount of that is going to end up in Old Town no matter what. And then, let's see. Some folks were concerned that additional housing or additional people in the area would, and I think that's just simply the opposite. An empty lot where people can squat or just hide out is going to be a lot more troublesome than a housing development full of people and families with cars and jobs and eyeballs and telephones. There's some concern that very low income, people have been calling it extremely low income. People have been calling it a homeless shelter or a housing shelter. I just wanted to like a little reality check here that very low income by definition is 50% of the median income for Eureka, and low income is 80% of the median income for Eureka. So to be low income, that's $34,312 a year. That's $16.50 an hour. That's more money than I make. In case you guys think we make a lot of money doing this. So we're just talking about working families here. We're talking about people who make a similar amount of money to other folks that are in the neighborhood. This isn't going to be pulling people off the streets. That's another place. This is going to be just working families. And I happen to think the second ward would be a great place for working families, as it is a great place for my working family. My main thing here, my main comment is that someone is going to build on this lot. And as City Manager Slattery brought up, if the city is the one coordinating the building, then the people are going to have a lot more input in this process. If we want to talk about sidewalks, we want to talk about traffic safety, we want to talk about the look of the building, we want to talk about the contractor involved. All of these things are going to be part of the public input process that is going to be far more robust and far more communicative if the city does it than if a private land developer does it. That's my main thing. I feel like this is a good fit for the neighborhood. I know it's going to impact the folks who live on that street significantly. And I also know that we have to put housing somewhere. And I think it'd be a really good spot to put some housing. So that's my comments.
Thank you, Councilmember Moulton. Councilmember Castellano.
Thank you. Let's see. Well, I want to begin with saying that this is not a binary issue. We're not actually, well, in this particular instance, it's been framed as that often, but there's a much kind of wider space of possibility for making this decision from. And in many ways, I think it would be much wiser of council to have a special study session around this issue that looked in more depth at our overall kind of plans for housing within the city. To that point, maintaining parking lots, since 1960, there's been buildings in Eureka have been torn down and replaced by parking lots. Parking lots aren't actually the best way of solving parking issues. There's more creative ways of getting more parking out of a space than maintaining a lot. And I think it would be smarter to look at other solutions to parking, and maybe one of those is keeping one of the lots, or maybe one of those solutions is partnering with the county to address different kinds of parking. Maybe a garage, to the speaker who spoke previously, maybe a garage is the best thing to do. But the truth is we haven't had opportunity to discuss that or study that. And so my concern is that we're losing 3 publicly owned properties in our old town, which we'll likely never get back, and in order to maintain parking, which may not be the wisest way of supporting businesses, and it may not be the wisest way of solving our parking needs. And it certainly will not allow any housing to get built on any of those 3 lots. There are already people who live in between, 4th and 5th in Old Town. That's, for folks who feel like it's not an okay place to live, it is already happening. And, I think the people who live in those places are generally thankful to be living there. Let's see, rest of my notes. I think that there are things we could do in the interim in terms of changing the order of parking lots released for RFP as a measure of good faith to address our housing element. Also, I did contact someone, Robin, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting her last name, from HCD to just ask about the possibilities of extending our kind of revamp of the housing element, and that's certainly a possibility to get an extension on that if we wanted to look in more depth and address some of these larger planning issues. All in all, and to the speakers who spoke about housing getting already planned for the Pearson lot, I personally, and to Mr. Pearson's credit, I am a big fan of the development that he had planned for that lot. I thought it was really well thought out, and there was a long process of engagement with the city. And I do think it's accurate that if we conduct this transfer, we'll be reducing. The point of the housing element isn't just to fill in a bunch of numbers on the page. The point is to increase the overall housing in our community. And to that point, I think we're actually undermining our efforts in this.
Thank you. Councilmember Arroyo.
Thanks for everyone's comments and all of the correspondence we've received, which has been very plentiful on this topic. This is definitely not an easy topic, and it's also not one that will make everyone happy no matter what. So I know going into this one that no matter the outcome of our vote tonight, there will be people who are frustrated that we're definitely developing a lot of housing in Old Town on lots that some would prefer not be developed for that use. And that we are, I think likely to also seek to develop housing elsewhere in town in locations that we could, I think, argue ad nauseum about the suitability of, given that nowhere is a perfect location in our community. I do have a few questions for staff around the process. I know we're not talking tonight about the process of the development, but I'd like to ask for a little bit more clarity about what will happen next. I know we have to go through the update of our housing element and some other procedural steps first, but then when we get to the point of proceeding with development, I'm hopeful that will happen during my time on council, but I'm not holding my breath because I know that these things can take time to do well. So I'm hopeful the process will begin, at least so I can weigh in if we do move forward with this tonight. I should give that caveat. Miles, City Manager Slattery, if you wouldn't mind elaborating a little bit about what that would look like, particularly when it comes to some of the concerns that have been raised around walkability and improvements that would be made not to the site, but to the infrastructure around the site as part of that process. Could you speak a little bit to that?
So yeah, as far as the timeline and what the steps would be if council approved this, in our discussions with HCD, what we've told them is that our intention is to get a clear inventory of those properties, and once we got an inventory of the properties that we would the intention would to go with all of those properties to the surplus land folks at HCD and exempt all of these properties because they all will be used for affordable housing. And we have a government code section that we've been counseled on from legal counsel that this would qualify to exempt all them. Once we exempt all them, staff would begin the process of updating the housing element. But that we've been told by HCD that we would have the ability to proceed with development before that housing So there's one of two things. So if we have these 4 parcels, it'll be added to our other 10 parcels, and likely the 2 parcels that are also on 3rd and G and 3rd and H. So there'd be about 15 parcels that we would choose from. We'd do an inventory for that. We'd exempt all them. At that point, once they were exempted and approved for exemption, there's different paths. The quickest path forward would be to work directly with a developer once they're exempt, and work with that developer on the type of housing that we feel would be appropriate for whatever location we're. And at that time, we could work with that developer, similarly like we did with Link after they awarded the RFP, about transportation, bike and ped transportation, other transportation improvements. Link obviously went above and beyond and is looking at a bicycle corridor, is looking at transit opportunities, increasing transit opportunities to the locations, those type of things. We could do that directly with a developer, or we could incorporate what we wanted from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 properties. Typically, with our housing only, we only wanted to limit it to 3 properties out of a time because of the ability to develop them. But we could also, rather than work directly with a developer, we could put it out to an RFP with those requirements built into the RFP. So there's options at that point. So yes, if we wanted to expedite it, I do know that there's a developer that proposed on our previous RFP that is very interested in this property.
Would we be able to, so looking at the map, I know there's a small parcel that is not proposed for transfer. But in visiting the site a few times, I've been thinking about walkability on that side of the street. Would we be able to develop a sidewalk, preferably with some form of protection from the roadway, in the form of some kind of barricade, I don't know, along that stretch of the road?
Yes, so similar to what happened with the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities grant with Link, there was public processes that they vetted different requests from the public about what they would like to see as far as transportation improvements. Those things were prioritized, and then they went after that funding. That Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities grant, as well as other grants, would be available to the developer to make those improvements.
Okay. Yeah, I am concerned after walking around the whole site at my own peril, in a couple locations where there's not a sidewalk. You know, the steepness of both Harris and Henderson, as they're, you know, kind of in line with that property, is such that I think ADA wise it would be challenging. Now, obviously, if we owned all of those parcels, then, you know, ingress egress through the site could be on that Broadway side as well. But, you know, just thinking about how people are getting down to or up to the kind of the level of their particular unit is something that I've been thinking about. Obviously, we'd work with a developer to address that concern. But, you know, it certainly made me think there's some engineering complexities there, and we would definitely need to put that front and center so that it's, you know, I think it could frankly make that part of town a lot better if we're able to make some of those improvements to pedestrian, you know, amenities and walkability and accessibility.
Yes, just like I referenced before with the Link project, you know, our traffic engineering folks work directly with Link on different potential options that could be improvements. I think that Harris is not the most amenable to those adjustments, and it would be probably direct. And I shouldn't speak because Scott Ellsmore's project manager Ellsmore's going to probably get mad at me, but it would make sense to me that you would direct pedestrian traffic over towards Henderson, because it seems that the pedestrian facilities there are a little bit more accommodating and there's not the blind turn and those type of things. So, but those are the things that traffic engineering would look at with the developer to make it most pedestrian traffic.
Okay. Yeah. It definitely poses some interesting challenges, but I think because it is a larger parcel, I personally feel like it offers some different opportunities as well. And I've been clear about that in the past meetings. I think a larger contiguous parcel offers like a different opportunity than frankly anything else we have to develop right now. So that's one of the things that I've expressed before that I really like about this site. And I know I spoke with the owner at the last meeting briefly, and just a little bit about, the plans, and I know he already spoke tonight, but to the comments that this will be developed anyway, I wouldn't say that it will be developed anytime soon if we were not to make this swap. Doesn't sound like that's currently a plan that's going to move forward anytime soon. So while there have been hearings and a discussion about those units and people liked the designs, it doesn't sound like it's on the table right now. So, I would say without this swap, that is not a guarantee that this will be developed for housing anytime soon. And it didn't have to do with the developability of the site. It had to do with the owner's, personal plans. So, I think that's something to note. We are still developing housing in Old Town and downtown. I know that several council members mentioned that, and I want to make that clear. When it comes to my personal preferences around preservation of parking lots, I have heard a lot of, our business community say that that's really important to them. And I hear you. And I think it's hard for like my personal behavioral practices are hard to ignore. I will almost never park in an off-street parking lot. If I have the choice, I always park on street. I don't know if it's that I learned to drive in Miami Beach, Florida, and I always had to park on the street and I'm used to it, or I just don't want to like get bumped or backed into in the same way. But for whatever reason, I never park in off-street lots. So it's not something that occurs to me as something of great value. And I'm not trying to say that it isn't of great value, but simply that it doesn't. And I think there are many people who feel that way, or who are part of my community and my friends who think like, well, what's the big deal with off-street parking? But I do hear that it is a concern. And I believe that what's more important to me about this whole conversation is not frankly parking. It's how many units we can get out of the available land and how much flexibility we have with the design of that so that it meets the goals of the city of Eureka. And that's why I think I am in support of this. And I think I will very much frustrate some people by saying so. But the number of units we can get out of this and the flexibility that the site offers and the chance to get away from Old Town, where all of the rest of the units, for the most part, are planned, is something really valuable. And I want to express appreciation to staff for bringing this forward, and to the property owners and those who have been involved for negotiating it. So I'll leave others chance to comment, but that's where I stand on it.
Thank you. Councilmember Bauer. No, you go ahead.
No, thank you. Yeah, there's been a lot of really great comments from the public, from council about this project, and Councilmember Arroyo pretty much summed it up, right? It's about housing first and foremost. It's not about parking or location. It's about how many units we can get built and quickly. I think it's fascinating that the discussion isn't whether to not build, houses in a certain location. It's really personal preference. And Councilmember Roy, you said it perfectly, and we've heard it from others. It's like some of us in the community want the penultimate walkable community, right? Walk to the grocery store, walk to the bus stop. And so they think that the downtown location is the best. It makes sense. But it might not be the best for a family with children, in between freeways. It's something that's desired by people that, it's a personal preference. I'll just say that. So I'm in favor of the swap. I think it makes sense. I hope that people that their personal preference is a downtown location don't decide to litigate this, because I think we all desire housing more than where it's located. And so I hope that, this process has been good enough for people to air their preferences. But I think in the end, we're looking at getting as much housing as we can built. It's a good location at the Pearson site. And I hope we can move it forward. And
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Bauer. So I just have a few comments. I used most of my comments at the last meeting. For me, this process has not been about parking, although that is a benefit, but that's not what it's about. The property at Harrison Fairfield is a great location for families. It's a great location for families, unlike Old Town. It's close to a school, it's close to parks, it's close to a affordable grocery store, it's close to the pharmacy, the vets. There's so many opportunities there for folks to be walkable or to take the bus or to do whatever that might be. So I think that that's really important. And I'm really thank you to Mr. Pearson for giving some of his ideas as to why the project didn't move forward. I too spoke with him, and I don't believe it would move forward quickly either, especially with the prices of steel, wood, all these things that are happening with COVID. That's something that was discussed prior to COVID. And now there's just been so many different changes. There's rent control happening in the state that could be a problem for landlords in our state. Eventually, there are a lot of things going on. So I'm really grateful for this opportunity, and I absolutely support it. I think it's going to be a really great thing for families to have a place to be. I do want to say on a sidebar to that, though, just like I brought up last time, that it is going to be important to have and improvements. Those sidewalks need to be in, and I think we can address all of that in the RFP. Is that correct?
Either an RFP or directly working with the developer. Yes.
Okay, yeah. So as long as those things are in place, and again, just a reminder, we do have at least 2 properties still going forward in Old Town to be built, potentially 3, and more will be that are already going out, and then there'll be more after that. So for those who think that the housing won't happen in Old Town, well, I don't want to say you're wrong, but you're wrong. So I'll just say it. So with that, I will make the motion to adopt. Are there any other comments? Okay, yes. So I'm going to make the motion to adopt a resolution of the City of Eureka City Council finding that the... Oh, one thing I do want to say, though, is it is really unfortunate that this project had to become so politicized about, parking, not parking, when we're talking about families here. And I think we need to, get back to, trusting each other a little bit. Adopt a resolution of the City of Eureka City Council finding that the properties identified as APNs 01-142-007, 001-142-005, and 001-192-001 are exempt surplus lands pursuant to Government Code Section 54221 F1C, and approve a memorandum of agreement between Pearson Projects and Development LLC and the City of Eureka for the exchange of properties.
So, Mayor, not how important this is, but there's a typo in the number 1 recommendation. It should be 001-142-007.
So, adopt a resolution. I need to re-say the whole thing? Okay. Adopt a resolution of the City of Eureka City Council finding that the properties identified as APNs 001-142-007, 001 are exempt surplus lands pursuant to Government Code Section 54221 F1C. Did we have a second?
No, please.
I will, and with apologies to my neighbors on Fairfield, I will second that motion.
Great. Okay, can we have a vote, please?
Councilmember Castellano,
No.
Councilmember Arroyo,
Yes.
Councilmember Moulton,
Yes.
Councilmember Bauer,
Aye.
Councilmember Burgell.
Yes.
4 yes votes, Councilmember Castellano dissenting, motion carries.
Thank you. All right, moving on to bill number 1007, storage and handling of coal on city-owned trust properties. And that would be City Attorney Black.
Thank you. This is the adoption phase of the cycle of bill number 1007. And it is presented to you in identical content to the bill that you introduced 2 weeks ago.
Thomas Wheeler.
Hi, City Council. On behalf of the No Coal Humboldt Coalition, we urge you to adopt the resolution. Thank you for seeing this through, and thank you for the multiple iterations and all the work that has gone into developing this resolution.
Caroline Griffith.
Hi, same as Tom. On behalf of the No Coal Humboldt Coalition, just want to thank you for putting all the time and effort into crafting this and making an ordinance that works well and will stand up. And, you know, over the holiday last week, there was an explosion of a coal storage facility in the Baltimore Harbor, which I feel really just put like a major exclamation point on the need to adopt this ordinance. So thank you for thinking about the future of Eureka and doing this.
Karen Underwood.
Weighing in as number 3. I am speaking also for No Coal, but also for the Humboldt Trails Council, and just calling in to reiterate our support for this ordinance and our appreciation to you and your staff for moving forward with this. Carolyn stole my thunder. I was going to talk about the the explosion, the CSX coal silo that was located in Curtis Bay Terminal, just south of Baltimore City Harbor. And so far, that accident has been attributed to a jammed conveyor belt where a buildup of coal dust was ignited. And this is the kind of incident we hope to avoid in Humboldt County, and for that matter, California. There is a complimentary note today. Also, Senator McGuire's bill SB 307 passed unanimously with bipartisan support in the Senate Transportation Committee today. One of its parts is to prohibit state money from being spent on the build out of any new potential bulk coal terminal facility at the Port of Humboldt. So thank you very much for your support of this ordinance.
Thank you, Karen. Do you see any other hands?
That's it for online.
Is there anybody from the public that would like to comment on this item? The regulation of storage and handling of coal in the city? Welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. I don't really see a problem with it. I mean, if there was going to be business that came through here, it would be helpful, don't you think, to have more business come through the city? I mean, there's like 40 to 50% of our businesses are closed, and we have homeless everywhere. And you're talking about turning Old Town into a ghetto. It's kind of disturbing, really. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to comment? Okay, seeing no one, we'll bring it back to council for comments and a motion. Councilmember Castellano.
Thank you. I think we've made lots of comment on this before. I still support it, and I look forward to the flourishing of other green industries in our region. And with that, I'm just going to go ahead and make a motion to waive full reading, read by title only, and adopt bill number 1007-CS, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Eureka, adding sections 94.60 through 94.67 of Chapter 94 of the Eureka Municipal Code regarding prohibition of the storage and handling of coal and petroleum coke on city-owned property.
I'll second.
Okay, please vote. Are there any further comments? No? We take a vote, please.
Councilmember Castellano?
Aye.
Councilmember Arroyo?
Aye.
Councilmember Moulton?
Aye.
Councilmember Bauer?
Aye.
Councilmember Burgell?
Yes.
Unanimous yes vote. Motion carries.
Great. Thank you. And now we will move on to our ADU. Let me see. Vacation dwelling unit management. And we have a report on that from...
Yes, it'll be Principal Planner Kenyon along with Finance Director Millar.
Thanks, guys.
Hi, everyone. Good evening, council members and Mayor Pro Tem. I'll be presenting tonight with Director Millar about our vacation rental management initiative that we've been working on with the Housing Program Coordinator, Kristen Raymond, and others on staff. I'm going to start this presentation by discussing how we are currently managing vacation rentals in the city, and then Lane is going to discuss staff's goal for management going forward in this upcoming year. So first, just to step back and explain what we mean when we talk about vacation rentals. A vacation rental is a type of short-term rental. And in Eureka, we use a 30-day cutoff to distinguish between short-term and long-term rentals. A vacation rental is a type of short-term rental that involves renting a residence or a portion thereof to a guest. This is also known as a home rental or home share. It sometimes involves renting an entire residence, and it sometimes involves renting individual rooms or one or more of a number of housing units on a property. This map highlights in yellow where vacation rentals are allowed in the city, and they're allowed everywhere except industrial, agricultural, and public facility districts. Although confusingly, they are called by different names by our code depending on their location. We as a city classify vacation rentals either as having a proprietor on site residing at the property for the duration of the rental, or not having a proprietor on site at the property during guest stays. Our housing element refers to the second type of vacation rental as a full unit rental. So the pros and cons of vacation rentals have been discussed a number of times by council, so I'm just going to briefly recap some of the key pros and cons here. Vacation rentals provide a unique visitor experience that is different from a standard hotel room. They can be more affordable, especially for large groups and extended stays when you consider cost savings on things like parking and meals. And they also can provide special amenities like yard space and washers and dryers. Vacation rentals also incentivize people to purchase, rehabilitate, and improve housing. And they are a source of revenue for homeowners to help them pay their mortgage and invest back in their property. A number of our permitted vacation rentals are historic properties. If vacation rentals are operating legally, they also provide tax revenue to the city. Our municipal code requires all short-term rentals to pay transient occupancy tax. Vacation rentals can also be problematic. If enough houses in a neighborhood are converted to rent short-term rentals, it can affect the sense of community. Vacation rentals can also upset neighbors by occupying street parking, creating noise, and hosting events. And vacation rentals occupying residential space that could otherwise be used by people living and working in the community definitely can impact the supply of long-term housing in the city. So many of these potential negative impacts are more likely to result from vacation rentals with no proprietor on site. And that's why our zoning code treats rentals with no proprietor on site differently. During the housing element update, there was a lot of discussion about the desire to balance the need for housing with the market for vacation rentals. As a result, implementation measure H22 of the housing element specifically addresses vacation rentals. This measure first calls for the city to hire a specialized consultant to locate all vacation rentals in the city, including unpermitted homes. We have taken this first step, and Director Millar is gonna discuss that in the second half of the presentation. It then calls for the city to undertake a compliance drive to bring all unpermitted vacation rentals into compliance. This is what we want to focus on in the next year, and it's the focus of Lane's portion of the presentation. Once a compliance drive has been initiated, Measure H22 calls for staff to evaluate and report to council on the impact of full unit vacation rentals on residential availability, and it calls for council to consider a cap on the number of full unit rentals. Consistent with the housing element, council has identified vacation rental management as a strategic initiative under council's goal of maximizing all levels of housing stock. So the city first adopted regulations specific to vacation rentals in 2016, and those regulations became effective in the coastal zone at the beginning of 2018. The inland version has been amended a number of times, and the current version includes a cap provision that allows council to set a limit on the number of vacation rentals in residential zone districts. It states that the number of vacation rentals permitted and licensed cannot exceed any limit set by council, and it specifies that council can set either a limit on the number permitted and licensed per year or on the total number. As written, this cap only applies to rentals with no proprietor on site, and it only applies in inland residential zoning districts. As a result of this existing provision, it would just take a resolution of city council to set a cap. We wouldn't need to amend our zoning code. So what does an applicant have to do to receive approval from the city for a vacation rental? The answer is it depends on the location of the city and the type of rental. In the inland residential districts, all short-term rentals are referred to as vacation rentals, regardless of the type. So even if it's a hostel or a bed and breakfast inn, it's called a vacation rental by the code. If the proprietor will be on site, all required approvals are ministerial, meaning if the project meets the objective standards of the code, city staff grants approval and there's no public notice or hearing. The regulations require all vacation rentals to obtain a ministerial vacation rental permit. This is a one-time approval that runs with the land. The inland regulations also require all vacation rental uses to be inspected to residential standards by the building department prior to approval. They also must operate under a business license. So unless the applicant already has a business license for a vacation rental operation in the city, they must obtain one. And unlike the vacation rental permit and the building inspection, which are one-time approvals, a business license must be renewed each year. If the applicant is running their vacation rental business from a home in Eureka, they are also required to obtain a home occupation permit. This is a one-time approval as long as the person maintains their business license and stays in their subject home. If instead there's no proprietor on site, then a minor conditional use permit is required in addition to the other approvals. A minor use permit is considered by the planning director, and that decision is appealable to planning commission. All property owners within 300 feet of the vacation rental receive notice of the director approval with information on how to appeal the decision to the planning commission. In the inland mixed use districts, all short-term rentals are treated as commercial lodging. So even if a private residence is being converted into a vacation rental, it's still called commercial lodging, the same as a hotel or an RV park. Commercial lodging is principally permitted in most mixed use districts, and no vacation rental permit is required. A business license is still always required unless the applicant already has one. A building inspection is not explicitly required by the zoning code, but the city may still require it. And a home occupation permit is still needed, again, only if the operator is running their vacation rental business from a home in Eureka. There are 2 inland mixed-use districts where commercial lodging is only allowed with a conditional use permit. And in those districts, the applicant has to obtain a conditional use permit in addition to other necessary approvals, which is decided on by the Planning Commission at a notice public hearing. So to recap, what is required depends on what inland district you are in. If you are renting out your house as a short-term rental with no proprietor on site, depending on your district, you may be required to obtain a minor use permit, a conditional use permit, or no discretionary permits at all. And then there's the coastal zone. And I'm going to skip this in the interest of time, but I'm just going to say that it's a few iterations behind the inland code, and the plan is to update it consistent with the inland code as part of the larger local coastal program update. Planning, finance, and building work together to permit vacation rentals. And to make it easy for applicants, the city has developed one application packet that covers all required approvals and gets internally routed among the departments. The biggest time demand for city staff in processing vacation rentals are the building inspections. It is not uncommon for a vacation rental to fail its first inspection, and sometimes it's because there's unpermitted work at the residence that then triggers a building permit process. Use permit, staff reports, and noticing takes time too, as well as any required planning commission hearing. So based on a review of our permit tracking database, 37 properties have been approved for vacation rentals from when our regulations took effect in 2017 through today. Here's a map showing the location of those 37 approved properties. As you can see, they are pretty well distributed throughout the city. We have been averaging about 7 newly permitted vacation rental properties per year. I do want to note that although only 4 short-term rentals were approved in 2021, we currently have 6 additional applications that are pending approval that we received in the past 2 months, which was a weird spike. Lane will explain more about this in his presentation, but we know that there are anywhere from 88 to 119 vacation rentals in the city actively advertising online at any one time throughout the year. To put this number in context, according to the housing element technical appendix, there are 12,286 housing units within the city of Eureka. So vacation rentals currently occupy less than 1% of our housing stock. And now I'm going to turn it over to Lane for his part of the presentation.
Good evening. So the second part of this presentation has to do with how we're going to regulate our vacation dwelling unit operators. So to begin, let's look at the current situation. So since the beginning of 2020, on average, we've seen about 103 operators per month. In terms of TOT returns, so TOT returns come in every quarter. The most recent quarter was the July through September period, and we received about 35 returns associated with VDU operators. And then currently we have 37 permit holders. So if we compare those things, we have 37 permit holders, which is more than the returns submitted, which is good. But when we look at how many people are operating, clearly there's a big gap, and that's the gap that we're going to try to fill. In a perfect world, all of these things should equal each other. So that is ultimately the goal, and we hope to get there. One of the constraints in managing vacation dwelling units is keeping track of them and identifying them. We're all aware of Airbnb and VRBO. You know, being able to post your units online has made it a lot easier to go into the business. So we have contracted with a consultant who will help us bring people into compliance, as well as identify the operators, as well as to track activity. So we're under contract for the following services. That includes address identification, compliance monitoring, rental activity monitoring, and tax collection. So address identification, they provide a tool, an online tool, where we can see in real time where people are operating. They are actively looking at, I believe, over 60 different websites where people can post their properties. In addition, they, based on data that staff provides, this is information about those permit holders, they can tell us whether the unit is in compliance. They can also tell us rental activity. They can tell us how often the units are being booked and at what price. And with this information, I can calculate back taxes. We're also going to have them build a tax collection tool. This tool will allow operators to submit returns online as well as pay. We're going to extend the tool to the hotel operators because it's a little more streamlined than our current process. And then what are the next steps? So we're going to begin notifying operators. We're currently drafting a few different notification letters. We're going to work in batches. So we're going to do notify about 15 operators at a time. And that's going to be through mail or phone or email. The contents of the letter will let the operator know that they have 30 days to contact the city. Upon contact, they will have 30 days to pay their back taxes. And once they have paid what is owed, they will have 6 months to get through the permitting process. If they don't contact staff, they will be sent another letter. And if they contact us after the second letter, they don't get that additional 30 days. They have to pay within that first 30-day window. And if they don't respond to letters or emails or calls, we will refer them to code enforcement and the city attorney. So obviously, if we have 70 plus operators that are not submitting TOT returns or are getting through the permit process, clearly there is a big revenue potential here. Based on the 2020 data, VDU operators saw about $600,000 in rent revenue, and that provided the city about $60,000 in TOT. In 2021, and this is 3 quarters out of 4, rent revenues have almost hit $900,000, providing about $88,000 in TOT to date. So based on our current operators, I believe that if we were to collect TOT on these people that are not in compliance, we would likely see an increase in revenue at the low end of about 90,000 and at the high end close to 140,000. So with this additional revenue potential, staff is recommending that we use this additional money because it's significant to establish a housing trust fund. So a housing trust fund is a designation that you can get from the state where you set up this pot of money. This pot of money can be used for construction loans, financing, pre-development costs, acquisition, and rehab. What are the requirements of the fund? Construction also includes ADUs and junior ADUs, which would be consistent with our strategic visioning. The requirements of setting up a fund is to have a dedicated funding source. So in this case, it would be the unpermitted VDUs or any VDU coming into compliance once we start going after them. You have to have an average amount of revenue, or an average of $100,000 per year in revenue, which is between the low and the high estimate. And then the minimum application requests. So once you set up a trust fund, you can start to apply for grants from the state. You have to seed the fund with at least $500,000. But once that is achieved, the state will essentially double the money. So if we accumulate $500,000, the state approves our trust fund, we would then have about $1 million to put towards those uses. So there are guidelines. 30% of the funding in a trust fund needs to go towards extremely low income households. So that's 30% of the area median income or less. 50% would be dedicated to lower income households. So between 31 and 80% of AMI. And then 20% can be dedicated to moderate income households, where the income is between 81 and 120% of AMI. So obviously we have a lot to do, and this will take time. It could take 6 months to a year to address all of these operators. So I am proposing that staff comes back after the first quarter where we begin enforcement. So the second quarter of 2022, we can come back and give you an update. And then a few months after that, around the summertime, we can come back with another update and a discussion about applying a cap. The reason why I would not talk about the cap today is because I believe that we're going to see the number of operators go down due to enforcement. We've also seen a very steady amount of operators the past couple of years. That number has, it's hovered around 100. So it's not like they're increasing at a great amount today. But if we were to notice a wave of applicants, and let's say that average got closer to 150, we could adjust the schedule to kind of come back to maybe apply that cap a little sooner than what we're assuming today. But anyways, that concludes the report tonight. And are there any questions?
I have one. Can I go ahead? I'm sorry, I can't see the Mayor Pro Tem anymore. All right, I'm going for it. All right, well, I was just thinking about, so if someone has been operating for quite some time and they have quite a lot of back taxes to pay, what are your thoughts about a payment plan or something so that they can pay that over time to come into compliance versus paying all at once to catch up?
Yeah, we discussed the payment plan. I think if they're willing to work with us and they're able to at least make it an initial significant payment, that we would work with them. I mean, we want people to come in compliance. We don't want to put up roadblocks. So if they're engaging with us, and we can work with them.
And do you have any ideas on how to frame that effectively so it's like serious, but also will work with you? I can just imagine that people probably, some folks may be taken by surprise.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways we can address this from an enforcement standpoint. Technically they owe penalties and interest. I don't want to forgive any back taxes. I don't think that's fair to the people that have been in compliance since day one. So I think if they show a willingness to abide by the regulations and a willingness to pay their taxes and permit fees, and that that higher end number would likely come down, just as to show good faith.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so if we put these funds into a trust and end up with matching funds from the state and they need to go towards those projects with the different towns, like you say, could you give me some examples of what one of those projects might look like? What sort of things, just a concrete example of what sort of things these tax dollars might end up being spent on?
So if we're able to set up a trust fund, we've discussed an ADU financing program. This is achievable through the trust fund. That's one example. It could be used to do first-time homebuyer loans. You could use it for rehab grants. So maybe somebody needs a house and they can't, or not a house, a roof, and they can't afford it. So yeah, there's the money could be used very similar to what we see with CDBG or the home program.
So correct me if I'm wrong, Director Millar, but I think we could also, there's been a lot of discussion in the housing meeting. Us using property as opposed to buying multifamily residents or other residents and fixing them up. It could be used like the home key grant is used to purchase property and then have it rehabbed for housing as well, correct?
Correct. Yeah, acquisition. So yeah, you could, add units to or buy a property and add units. You just have to meet those income groups, or the money has to be directed at each of those tiers.
Lovely, thank you. I'm concerned, I think like a lot of people, of removing any housing at all from Eureka. Taxes from this could go to help other people buy houses or improve the housing that they already have is very encouraging to me.
Leslie.
Councilmember Castellano, go ahead.
Thanks. Sorry, I'm not sure if the Mayor Pro Tem's microphone is working, but anyway, I'll just say I'm really excited about the Housing Trust Fund. Maybe you already know that. So thank you so much for your work on that. And just a couple quick questions. One, and also thank you for both of you, everyone who's done it, for your work on the vacation dwelling units information. I noticed a lot of these numbers are, since COVID. Do we have a sense of what the numbers were like before then? Does it seem like they were more or less the same? Or would we expect an increase? I don't know. I hate to say post-COVID, but would we expect an increase?
I've actually been collecting the data for quite a while, even prior to COVID. What I noticed was COVID actually reduced the activity. Maybe that's because people stopped moving around as much. It seems like in 2021, we are seeing a increase, but it's hard to tell sometimes because if the operators increase the price per unit, that could be why we're seeing more revenue versus more days booked. But I think we can drill down and kind of understand what's going on. But I can tell you that average number of operators has really stayed pretty steady. At first I expected that number just to keep growing, but it seemed like due to market forces, he kind of just leveled off naturally. That's why I'm not worried about, a few months or 6 months from now having like 300 or 400. I just don't think that's reasonable given the permitting process and just, setting up a unit for this purpose.
Great. And then the other question, or I guess more thought related to compliance, it seems like I appreciate that there's a, kind of 30 and 60-day voluntary compliance period once notified. Will there be kind of fees beyond the normal unpaid fees related to, you said it would go to code enforcement. Would that also include, fees that would be charged for not complying?
I believe there would be a cost associated with the time that code enforcement would spend trying to help us in our enforcement process.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions or comments? Mr. Bauer, Councilmember Bauer?
No, I just want to say great presentation. I mean, I think you answered all the questions that we had earlier or last year about this. And yeah, look forward to seeing what happens in the first quarter. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Great.
No further questions. Great. We're going to move on to, are there any future agenda items people want to bring forward?
We do need to extend the meeting. It's 9:30. Sorry, the clock broke.
Yeah, the clock did break. So would anybody be willing to extend the meeting?
I'll move that we extend the meeting to,
We have
what time is it now?
9:30. We have one more item and then we have public comment.
Well, they get 3 minutes each. So till 10. I move that we extend the meeting until 10 o'clock.
Well, second.
Thank you.
Oh, can we vote, please?
You can just go ahead and raise your hand on this one.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so does anyone have future agenda items? Councilmember Arroyo.
Yes, I'd like to ask, and I did speak with our city manager about this already, but I'd like to see if others agree about having a presentation about intersections in Eureka or locations where there are traffic safety concerns. I do know that the Traffic Safety Committee is working on an update to their plan, but still like to see the data from our staff and engineering department.
I think that would be really interesting. So it looks like we have consensus. I can't see Councilmember Castellano, but looks like all thumbs up all the way around.
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Great, thanks everybody.
Does anyone else have any other items they'd like to bring forward? Councilmember Bauer.
Yeah, maybe this is more of a get a staff review of this, but I was reading about, I forget which city, Portland or something, and offering tax incentives to businesses that bought local. I'm talking about produce, whatever, beef. And I'm just curious, maybe first question is, what is the city? I mean, do we buy for events or anything like that? And then would that be something that people are interested in, trying to help local production of food by a tax incentive or something to that nature?
So for city events and those type of things, we typically try and buy local. We don't really go to like the farmer's market and cook food or something. I mean, we do for like employee appreciation events and stuff like that for barbecues. But we do try and buy local for our events that we hold. We've never looked at a tax incentive for buying local. I assume, are you meaning for restaurants to buy local or?
Yeah, I mean, in general, and we got a lot of local producers. I think they're doing all right, but they could always use use support. And I forget exactly how these kind of co-ops were structuring this, and I think I want to say it's in Oregon, but it was essentially all the groups, all the food producers come together and then sell locally as essentially a co-op. But I'm thinking about how do we incentivize our local businesses to buy, especially our dining, our food places, to buy local, or how can we support that? Maybe it's not a tax incentive or tax break, but how do we support that?
It seems it would be interesting to know how many businesses locally already do buy their things, local. And maybe it's a survey to begin with, and then if there's any kind of meat to the bone, we could look at it further. I don't know. What do other people think?
Certainly
Anyone?
in favor of supporting local producers. I'm curious how that would hit the ground in the tax code, given the layers of sales taxes and things for state and local. It's not necessarily, that wouldn't necessarily be simple, but maybe some information gathering in order to seed the possibility of action.
Yeah,
Can you specify your question that you want staff
no, I
to
think
ask?
that's what you pretty much summed it up. Maybe information gathering to see what our local businesses are doing.
Yeah, I was going to say that we can look into it. I know that Oregon is a little bit different than California, so we can look into it.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. So it looks like I can't see Councilmember Castellano. Do you have any items? No. Okay. Great. So moving on to city managers' reports. City Manager Sparks. It says Sparks on here.
Good evening, Mayor LaValle and Council.
Good one.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So I wanted to give an update on the safe parking program. We intended to bring this back to Council prior to the end of 2020. And I just wanted to give a brief update and let you know that staff has been working on this. We did determine, so first of all, our initial goal was to develop a program similar to a Mountain View or to other counties that are in California, where you can develop a program for an application process that has certain requirements for people in order to participate in a safe parking program. That could either be on government-owned property or on private property. And so in order to be effective, we really feel that we need county participation in this, and county has where we are and what we can currently do. We had staff review our shelter crisis ordinance, and our planning and building staff feel that safe parking property would be allowable under that shelter crisis ordinance, and so it would follow the same guidelines as we currently do for Betty's Blue Angel Village, for St. Vincent de Paul's Tiny Village, and for other projects that we looked at. It would basically entail, if there's a private property owner out there that was willing to do this, we would the building and zoning requirements for that property, and then we could get an agreement with a third party for them to operate a site. So staff is going to continue to work with the county on developing a more robust program for an application process, but we will also have our Uplift and CSET teams in all of the meetings that they go to, whether that's the homeless leadership group meetings or the continuum of care or the project coordinator Davis, as well as Sergeant LaFrance, spread the word that this is available in the city of Eureka limits and see if there's we've also spoken with Arcata. Arcata has funded a program that's in its infant stages of being implemented. They have an 11-acre site in Arcata. They have availability for 30 vehicles at that site. I spoke with City Manager Deemer in Arcata. She is willing to have us participate in that if the level of participation is such that we can add more. So it's going to take a while for them to get that up and running. Once it's up and running and they have capacity, City Manager Deemer is willing to work with the city to allow us to help fund that and potentially take people to that location as well. depending on the capacity. I've also spoken to Darlene Spoor, who is the executive director of Arcata House Partnership, who is the third party entity that's overseeing Arcata's program. And I think they would be a good fit if we were to develop a program to be our third party people to manage the sites. She is interested, but she wants to see what kind of time it's going to take and what kind of resources it's going to take to operate the Arcata site. So we'll keep that all in mind and still work with the county on a more robust program. But if anybody is inquiring of council or anybody in the public knows of a location and knows of an interested property owner, they can contact myself, and we can work out something to where we can get a safe parking program on that site. But I will come back to council hopefully within the next couple of months with hopefully something in partnership with the county. If not, then we'll do something with just the city. And that's all I have if you guys have any questions.
Thank you. Sorry. When will the safe parking facility in Arcata be available?
It's only for Arcata folks right now, and they'll be doing it with referrals with. I'm thinking it's supposed to be up and running by the end of the month.
Okay.
So the property's been secured. They know the location. They're coordinating all the efforts right now and starting to get that up and running.
I see. Thank you. Nope.
I'm not hearing anything. I think your mic's off again.
It's on. It's on now. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to be opening public comment in just a moment. I just want to go over the decorum of the meeting because some of you weren't here when we first began. All persons in attendance at public meetings are requested to observe the following rules of civil debate. 1, we may disagree, but we will be respectful to one another. 2, all comments will be directed to the issue at hand. 3, personal attacks are unacceptable. And 4, applauding or other displays of approval or disapproval are discouraged. Additionally, all persons in physical attendance at public meetings are required to adhere to any and all public health orders in effect at the time of the meeting, which has been issued by the state of California and or the county of Humboldt in regards to the wearing of face coverings or other COVID-19 prevention measures. All right, so if we could have our first person come on up.
Hi, thank you for this opportunity. I slightly mentioned it in my previous talk about that traffic corner at Harrison Fairfield. I was not actually planning on speaking, so I'm not really that prepared. I've been developing a report with pictures, and there seriously has been 8 accidents. Not all of them have probably have police reports because sometimes they just exchange insurance and move on, right? There has been at least once or twice a week, people turn right on a one-way going left on that. The markings on the road there are very, I would get confused if I was the first time down that street. The arrow goes straight, but you actually have to go, you can either turn a sharp left or go left to continue on onto Glen, right? So you can't go straight. So when people see that straight, and they just, I literally see 1 to 2 a week go the wrong way. Luckily, not all of them turn into accidents. They end up going down the alley, like they realize it because people coming up are honking at them. I live right there, right? And I work from home, so I see it right out my window. My computer, my stand is right there. And they end up driving into the Pearson's parking lot, or they turn left down the alley that's right there behind my house. And so I was gonna write to you. I've been taking pictures. I walk all around that neighborhood. I've noticed the speed limits going down Glen are 25 on Fairfield, which is just as residential as at 30. Like really, Fairfield should be at 25 mile an hour. I think all of Fairfield should be 25. There's something that could be done with those arrows on the road. Like there's some cheap improvements that could be made. And I'm sorry, I get excited and passionate. Putting a crosswalk in, right? And maybe, I don't know how expensive or not expensive those rumble strips are. Not a speed bump coming up Harris, but a rumble strip, you know, where like, and it like warns you to slow down coming up that blind curve. It is literally, when I was leaving to come to this meeting, there was an accident and there was police there. So I mean, it is a very bad corner, and I was going to bring it to your attention, and I don't know how to get involved. I'm going to contact you. I was told by the city to contact you. So just keep that in mind, and I appreciate the idea of getting a report done. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. I appreciate all of you.
And thank you all for waiting. I know it's been a long evening.
Hello, my name's Adam Lustig. I'm a resident here in Eureka. I previously spoke at your meeting when you passed your unconstitutional vaccine mandate for your employees. And, you know, tonight I'd like to speak about COVID. I realized from the meeting and from watching that it's pretty obvious that you all subscribe to the mainstream narrative coming from the federal government and Dr. Fauci and President Biden and, you know, Rachel Maddow about COVID. That was quite clear from the meeting that everyone seems to be, you know, steadfast in their agreement with that narrative. And, you know, it's frustrating to the large percentage of the county that does not subscribe to that narrative to see this and see that, you know, we have no voice here amongst the Eureka city government that agrees with us or even really wants to hear what we have to say. There's one thing you could do for us, your constituents that don't agree with this narrative. There is a current Joe Rogan interview with Dr. Robert Malone, and he was one of the inventors of the mRNA technology, and he is a established vaccinologist and an expert in his field. And it's very much eye-opening. Many of my friends and family, they gained a new understanding of the whole COVID thing from watching this. And if there's one thing you could do to just recognize us and just try to be a little bit objective and just take a look at what the other side has to say, I think it would make us feel a lot better going forward and make us feel that like, you know, that our voices are heard, because, you know, we get shamed. You know, all this talk of pandemic of the unvaccinated, which is funny because you see with Omicron that just as many people vaccinated are getting it as unvaccinated. I mean, I'm seeing it in the data. I'm seeing it in town and my friends across the country. So, you know, there's definitely another side to this, I think, that needs to be recognized. And just for example, like Dr. Leanna Wen on CNN recently came out and said that the cloth masks don't work, and they never did work for any of the variants. And so did Dr. Scott Gottlieb was on Face the Nation this weekend, former head of the FDA. He said the same thing. CEOs of the major airlines, they've said the same thing recently too. So, you know, a lot of people are starting to pivot on what their perspective is on COVID. There's a lot more new data coming out. And so I think I just want to encourage you to please try to have an open mind and just try to look at both sides of this issue and have a little compassion for your constituents that don't agree with you politically. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam.
My name is Donnie Creekmore. I'm with Humboldt Freedom Coalition. That's HumboldtFC.com. We are a nonprofit coalition built of Humboldt citizens, family members, and friends who are concerned about the encroaching attack on our individual liberties and our bodily autonomy. We stand against fascism, tyranny, and government overreach. We reject a one-size-fits-all approach to the problems that we face, and we reject being silenced. We reject being coerced into taking a medical product that we do not see fit, that we have sound, legitimate, science-backed reasons to deny. We reject a one-size-fits-all, government-down, mandated approach to the things in our lives. We are adults. We can manage our own affairs. We don't need a nanny state, Eureka City Council explaining to us our rights or trying to act like these are benefits and privileges. They are not. You are public servants. We are not your subjects, and we will not be treated as such. Now, with that said, I'm putting you all on notice. We are strong. We are building. We are growing. We are going to canvass the entire Humboldt County, and we're going to air every single comment and every single thing that has been said egregious against the Humboldt citizens by this board, by the county board, and by any other government official that thinks for 1 second that they're not a public servant. You're all on notice. HumboldtFC.com. Come check us out. Come be a member if you are also enraged by what you're seeing. If you're sick and tired of being force-fed a narrative by political ideologues that won't even take the time to look at peer-reviewed literature that's counter to their narrative because, oh man, it might look bad and they might get egg on their face, come join us because we aggregate peer-reviewed literature on our website, HumboldtFC.com/projects/trust the science. If you trust the science, shoot, go on there. There's a bunch of peer-reviewed literatures. If you guys disagree with any of it, absolutely, by all means, go and object and rebuttal the scientists, you know. I'm sure they'd be interested in your perspectives. Thank you.
Thank you, Donnie.
Evening. For anybody who thought Donnie was being a little crazy, I was surprised to read this when I picked this up. It says, land acknowledgement. The land that Eureka rests on is known in the Wiyot language as Jiroji. Is that correct?
Jirojiji.
Okay. Past actions by local, state, and federal governments removed by the Wiyot and other indigenous peoples from the land and threatened to destroy their cultural practices. The city of Eureka acknowledged the Wiyot community, their elders, both past and present, as well as the future generations. This acknowledgement demonstrates the city's commitment to dismantle the ongoing legacy of settler colonialism. There's so many things that I'm disappointed by in the city council. And this was another one, because this is pretty crazy to be sitting on a piece of paper for the city council, to be honest. You talked about families, about, the low income housing. If you were concerned about families, you should be asking yourselves, what are the metrics that we should be looking at? Like maybe we should see more families walking around town. Maybe I should see more kids walking the streets and owning the streets rather than homeless. I've lived in this area since 2000, and this is the worst I've ever seen it. And it's even exacerbated by the fact that you guys are making us wear masks. Well, like if a homeless person goes into a building, they're not going to be asked to wear a mask. They're not going to be touched. The only people where laws actually apply to are the people with money and people who work for a living. I'm sick of it. I really am. And you guys are sitting here talking about basically turning Old Town into a ghetto. It's a beautiful area. Please don't. I understand you guys want to build low-income housing because there's money there that you would otherwise not be able to use. But you have to think about what's happening when you create more dependence on the government. It just creates more dependence. That's all it does. Those ordinary people that are below or that are above those income brackets, there is less housing for them to compete with. They get pushed out, and their only chance is to move at that point. And then it puts a cap on low income earners because what they end up doing is they end up thinking about, well, if I make over this much, then I'm stuck until I make, say, 20 or 30,000 more than that. And so they stay there, and they never push ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Ash Teeter. my wife worked for the city up until a couple months ago, and then your mandate happened. She was lucky enough to find another job here in town. But I've heard that someone else like took one of the shots who was working for you and had a bad reaction, and then she still got fired. Is that true? And I myself have multiple sclerosis, so I can't take the shots. I have no idea what it'd do to me. So I guess I can't apply to work for the city. And I don't see how any of this like passes the ADA smell test federally. I don't know. I'll go through some current world events that I guess the Australian government now admits that severe vaccine side effects, offering some victims over $600,000 in cash compensation. Pilots are suing the Biden administration. A letter is being sent as well to the federal aviation agencies and CEOs. Charles Lieber was arrested. He's the inventor of the nanotechnology inside the shots for receiving, like, I forget how much money, like $50,000 it was either a month or a year from China. The FDA issued a stark warning to public, urging them to stop using rapid COVID-19 antigen tests developed by Innova Medical Group, the company previously tapped by the UK for hundreds of millions of kits. Place them in the trash, they said. Quidel recalled a year's worth of COVID PCR tests. The recall covers more than 3 dozen of the tests, spanning 18,385 kits, each of which can be used to perform 96 analysis. The effect kits were manufactured between March 2020 and March 2021, distributed between mid-March 20 and the end of May last year. Bill Maher, he came out. He's skeptical of the booster after taking both the shots. That was on the Jimmy Dore show. Over 23,500 airmen and guardians, they said no to the, I guess that's National Guard, said no to the COVID vaccine. So they'll probably lose their jobs too. The FDA added a warning about the risk of myocarditis and pericarditis to the fact sheets for Moderna and Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccines. Vaccine-injured individuals are afraid to speak out in fear of being shamed by friends and family. This was a letter to the editor in the Red-Headed Black Belt. CDC announces that 79% of all Omicron cases have occurred in the vaccinated individuals. Yep. Facebook admitted in court that its fact checkers are only opinions, not facts. And then our Department of Health and Human Services accepted money from Mark Zuckerberg's wife. And that makes our local health mandates officially opinion-based.
Thank you, Ash.
Anyways,
your time
have
is
a nice
up.
night. Thank
yeah.
you.
I appreciate you guys sticking around. Thank you. And thank you for wearing your masks indoors. Appreciate that too.
We have one caller online.
Oh, and then I have one caller online.
Caller with the last 4 digits of 4402. Please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. There we go. Okay. Hey, thank you for sticking it out. A little bit of a similar sentiment. I don't want to get too deep into the weeds because been all through them. In any case, it's troublesome. It's about I'm very troubled by the vaccine mandate at the city level. As someone who's spent years in construction and maintenance and facilities in this area, one of the jobs I looked into recently was the city job, which I'm currently not allowed to pursue because of the vaccine mandate. As someone who's previously injured by an MMR vaccine, I think people take it way too lightly that lots of people have lots of problems with lots of vaccinations. I had 2 years of inflammatory disorders from an MMR vaccine, something that's very well understood and very long proved, right? This is a new thing. There's no reason to do this. Y'all didn't have to do it. Y'all chose to do it. And it's intentionally divisive. Maybe not intentionally. I hate to pass judgment in that regard, but it's just inhumane at the very least. Y'all make your own personal decisions based on what you want to take into your bodies. We take ours. our tax money, and I'm being discriminated against, and I'm not going to apply for an exemption because there's no need for it. It shouldn't exist in the first place. Consider what y'all are doing, because this is going to be over soon, and you're going to have to remember what you did. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for hanging out.
And
do you see anyone else? No?
Nope.
Okay, great. So we will move on to council reports. And is it 10? Okay, so can we get someone willing to extend the meeting?
Okay.
I'll second 10 minutes.
Alrighty.
No, you did.
You did. We heard you.
I move that we extend the meeting for an additional 10 minutes.
And I'll second that.
Thank you.
Okay. So moving on to council reports, let's go ahead and start with Councilmember Castellano.
Sure, and I think there was a general thumbs up from everyone for that. Let's see, I'm going to keep it quick. Let's see, I am still out of town, but I return on Thursday. So if I look tired, it's just because it's midnight where I'm at. But let's see, I've been attending some meetings still on Zoom while I've been away. And I want to say that on January 15th, there is going to be a Wabash cleanup organized by Robin Prasker and myself. And then also, try not to speak too much about work-related stuff, but this is kind of beyond my scope of work, and that is Libby Maynard, the executive director of the Ink People, is retiring, and there are going to be not one but two celebrations honoring her. One's on Friday, January 21st, and it's a kind of a more formal event, and then the other is a street festival type of event on Saturday, January 22nd. So look for more information about that coming out. I'm finished.
That's wonderful. Councilmember Arroyo.
I will skip my report in the interest of time.
Thank you.
And do it next time.
Councilmember Bauer.
Yeah, I've been out of town for a couple of weeks, so I'll just say I look forward to 2022 and hopefully a happier and healthier year.
Let's hope for it. Councilmember Moulton.
Thank you. Let's see. I haven't been to any additional meetings since the last time I spoke here. But I did want to point out that the Eureka City Schools Board meeting, the next one is on January the 13th. That's coming right up. The last one was had some contentious things in it. If you're concerned about those, you want to look into what's happening at Eureka High or in Eureka City Schools, go ahead and read up on that. And the board meeting where you can make your voice heard is January the 13th. Also, I've heard a couple folks complaining or, rightfully concerned about sidewalk hazards or tripping hazards or broken habit of reading out phone numbers. I just want to point out that the city doesn't find out about those things necessarily unless somebody tells them. So if you come across a traffic hazard or a tripping hazard on public land, you can report it to Public Works directly. Their number is 707-441-4194, and you can find that on the city website if you look under departments and look for Public Works. And then just on a personal note, I want to say that masks work, and they also can make people feel anxious because breathing through your mouth causes your fight or flight response to go off. And so if you find yourself try and take some slow, deep breaths through your nose, and let's all get through this together. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. And I'll keep it, or Councilmember Moulton, and I'll keep it brief too. I just wanted to report that because I was on break from my day job, I got to go out with the CSET team, and I spend a full day out with them, and that is always an adventure. I really appreciate all the work that they do. It's an awful lot, and if you haven't had that opportunity, I would really, as council members, I would really encourage you to do so. There's a lot to learn. Every time I go out, I learn something different. Sometimes it's particularly more adventurous than others, like this last time, but we won't go into that. And then I got to be an elf again for Cape, and that was awesome. Charlotte McDonald played Santa Claus, and we went to several places. And I have to tell you, this one kid, the greatest thing about it was he had baked cookies for Santa, and he's a big kid, and so when she got there, he was just so excited to see Santa, just so excited, and to see that kind of light come on in people is just such a gift. It's just such a gift. So that's a happy note that I think we'll just go ahead. If there's nothing further, we'll adjourn.